Okay, make sure I get everything. Somebody's got their Hello, testing. Like I saw Dan trying, you know.
I hear audio.
Oh, hi Dan, I was trying to find your little square. Put you up with everybody else. All right, we gotcha. All right, everybody, it's 7 o'clock as per Verizon. Okay, welcome to our Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 the council meeting. Governor Inslee's order 20-28.15, the OPMA remains in effect. It requires public meetings, hearings to be held remotely with the option of also holding an in-person component to a public meeting or hearing if certain conditions are met. At the present time, the city of Liberty Lake has determined not to hold an in-person component to a public meeting hearing. That will change next meeting on the 15th. All right, so welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and start off our meeting with the invocation led by Councilmember Dunn, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's join me.
Father in heaven, we are grateful to come together as a community to listen and speak of the place we call home. We are grateful for the many blessings you provide to our world. Grateful for those who stand and serve the people around them, especially our first responders and serving and retired military members of our community. Grant us courage to seek the truth with dignity and respect. Inspire in us wisdom. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag,
the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Please order. Roll call here. Secretary is here, but we will verify. Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy.
President.
Councilmember Baird. Councilmember Cardinal.
Here.
Councilmember Van Orman. Here. Councilmember Follier.
Here.
Councilmember Kurtz. I think you're on mute, Councilmember Kurtz. Just check your.
Can you guys hear me? I'm not on mute.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, gotcha. And Councilmember Dunn. Got it.
Happy to be
All
here.
right. Thank you. All right, so we are to the agenda approval. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Make a motion on agenda approval if there are no other additions or subtractions from any council members.
We have a second
Second.
discussion?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to add trailhead discussion to our workshop time period.
Actually, Lisa has a spot in the administrator's report for an update. Would that suffice?
I have a discussion with the council on trailhead.
So we have a motion to add, I guess let's put it on D, Trailhead Workshop. We have a second to add Trailhead to workshops. Second. We have a second by Councilmember Van Orman. Any discussion? Okay, not hearing any. Those in favor of adding a workshop on Trailhead to 9D, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, ayes have it 7-0. So our we have done an amendment to the agenda. Any other amendments or changes? Okay, not seeing any. We've got a motion agenda approval. So we'll move the agenda as amended. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please do that.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, we have ourselves an approved agenda. All right, moving right along, we are at citizen comments. So this is the time when our citizens can weigh in on any of our issues. Just a couple of ground rules. If you would please introduce yourself and let us know if you're a resident of Liberty Lake proper within the city limits or not. You'll have 3 minutes. This is purely a citizen comment period. There will not be any response from the council or myself unless there's a point of information to clarify. If there are any actions requested, we will make sure we have your contact information so we can have a staff member get back to you with an answer. So if you'd like to make a public comment, please go ahead and send a message to Todd Henderson in the chat feature, and he will let me know who is here to speak. Todd, do we have anybody?
Kim Smith.
Okay, Kim Schmidt, you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Kim Schmidt. I do live within the Liberty Lake city limits. So good evening, everybody. I just wanted to point out that the proclamation that has been promoted by the mayor and certain council members is political posturing. This alarms me, as our mayor and council are supposed to be nonpartisan positions. Further, when you consider the recent and similar actions by other area councils, there appears to be alignment and adherence to principles promoted by movements defined by their anti-government beliefs, such as Liberty State and the Redoubt movement. If we want to be real honest with ourselves, Liberty Lake hasn't done an outstanding job at managing COVID cases. To date, for Spokane County, our case rate in Liberty Lake per 100,000 citizens is just over 22,000, which places us in kind of like the middle bottom section for the county. As someone who lives in Liberty Lakes and works at a public-facing job in Liberty Lake, my experience is that there wasn't much compliance with mandates to start with. This was especially alarming and troublesome to me, as I also care for a family member and must be incredibly cautious with my interactions because I cannot risk getting COVID and bringing it home. To wrap it up, the motive behind such a proclamation is worrisome when I take into consideration the associations and alignments that many of our citizens may not be aware of. And I worry about where this leads next. Thank you for letting me speak.
Really appreciate you being here. All right, are there any other public comments, Todd? Anybody have any questions or any comments to make? I don't see any hands. All right, I will ask Kelsey to jump in real quick. We did have quite a few written comments come in over the last week, so she will just note the topic and the names of the people who sent in the comment. Those have all been shared with council. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Thank you, Mayor. So we received written comments with the topic of Trailhead from Greg Cronin and Randy Walker. We also received written comments regarding the proclamation on tonight's agenda from Ron Gray, Christy Deniston, Aaron and Jason Merrifield, Sandy Bishop, Carmen Green, Joseph Pitt, and June and Rick Jacobson.
Thank you. All right, so not seeing or hearing any further citizen comments, we will move on to our announcements, proclamations, special proclamations. So we will start off with Chief Simmons introducing our two new police officers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Liberty Lake. Please help us in welcoming the two newest members of our team, Officer Jordan Rippey and Officer David Howard. Officer Rippey comes to our agency in the city of Liberty Lake after working for the Washington State Patrol since 2010. Officer Rippey served as a detective from 2017 until the time he joined our team and family. He is a certified collision technical specialist and a collision reconstructionist, as well as an unmanned aerial vehicle or UAV drone pilot. Is Officer Rippey in chambers there, or is he online? Does he want to say a couple of words?
He's on Zoom. I see him right now. Would you like to say anything? Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for welcoming me so with such open arms. I appreciate it, the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with the city.
Welcome. And you luck out if you're not here. You don't have to run the gauntlet shaking everybody's hands. All right.
Thank you, Officer Rippey. Officer David Howard also comes to the Liberty Lake Police Department from the Washington State Patrol. Officer Howard worked as a trooper with the Washington State Patrol from 2012 until the time he joined our team and family. During his time with the Washington State Patrol, he was a lead control tactics and weapons instructor. Officer Howard received his Associate of Arts and Science degree from Spokane Community College before receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree from Eastern Washington University. And I believe Officer Howard, I saw that he was on. Would you like to say a couple of words?
He's hiding in the darkness, like.
Yes, ma'am. I'm in the patrol car tonight. So appreciate you having me here. Appreciate the opportunity to serve this great community. And just, I look forward to being a part of it. So if you see me out there, come say hi.
And you can't miss him. He's twice my size, so he's hard to miss. So welcome, Officer Howard.
I hope you get him a car you can fit in, Chief.
We're working on that. We're working on that. So thank you and welcome Officer Howard again.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to proclamation. So Councilmember Gill had brought this up last week. with the request to have the council weigh in on supporting this, the couple of Senate bills and House bill that are going through the legislature right now. So we have it before you, and I'll defer to Councilmember Cargill with regards to background or anything else you want to say.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make it very clear to everyone who's emailed us, everyone who's reached out. We've had a lot of comments on this. Every emergency order that a governor gives impacts our community, especially statewide emergencies, obviously, and it impacts our city. It also highlights the fact that those who we send to Olympia sometimes are not able to do their job if they are under emergency orders. The proclamation that is on the agenda tonight is not about Jay Inslee. It's not about COVID or safety protocols. It's really not about Democrats or Republicans either. The proclamation we're considering tonight is a statement of this council, this community, that it believes in separation of powers and checks and balances. The proclamation we're considering tonight is also about allowing legislators the opportunity to do their job. And it's about letting citizens the opportunity to have a say in what state government is doing. Now, we've gone for, as everyone knows, 700+ days now under emergency rules and emergency authority that the governor has declared. That's nearly 2 years this month. 2 years this month. We all want the executive branch, the governor, to have the ability to respond quickly to an emergency, but we also elect the legislature and our local legislators for a reason. And that reason is to create the laws and be a check on the governor's power. Over the past week, more than 8,000 people have signed up to testify or have signed in to be part of the hearings on these particular bills that the legislature is considering. And they are bipartisan bills, both Republicans and Democrats supporting this. The majority of these folks have been in favor of some sort of emergency powers reform. And there are a bunch of different options in these 3 different bills. But all this means is that the legislature would have to sign off on the governor's emergency powers after a certain period of time. That's it. It doesn't change anything. The legislature actually may do the exact same thing that the governor has done. Or they might extend the timeline and give the governor further authority, but both branches of government would be involved. And that's not silly or dangerous. It's a core function of our democratic republic. And most other states do not give any one person unending power. Our city doesn't give one person, the mayor, unending power. We share power as a legislative body with the mayor. The same should be true at the state level as well. The bills are different in how long an emergency order they allow for, either 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, regardless of which one you're in favor of. The principle remains the same. No one person should have the ability to rule on any one issue for such a long period of time. And I would just end with this. If you're thinking about this in terms of a Republican or Democrat issue, I would think, and I would hope that people would think how they would feel if the exact opposite person or party was in power. They would probably support this. The passage of any of these bills, support for them sends a message. It does not change the health protocols. It does not remove mask requirements. It does not impact vaccine distribution or vaccine requirements. I think we have a responsibility as a council and as a community to stand up and say that we want to have a return to separation of powers, and we want our legislators who we elect here in the 4th and then the 9th as well to be heard. And Mayor, if I can just read one quote from the Tri-City Herald editorial board about this. They end their editorial last week with this. These bills are not about an end to COVID, but about bringing balance back to state government. And they are about allowing the legislature to do its job. They are also about ensuring that there is a way to rein in future governors, not just the current one that we're talking about. Governor Inslee has made saving lives a priority, which is a stance we support. But during the past 2 years, our legislators, the people's representatives, have been shut out of the state's COVID strategy. The system of checks and balances in Washington state is out of whack, and it's time to put it in order. So that is why I brought this forward today. Some other communities are passing these resolutions as well. And that's why I was hoping the council could consider it this evening. So thank you.
All right, we'll open it up to comments, and I will try my best to keep track of who's raising their hand virtually and here in person. I see Councilmember Dunn. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'm not going to address the merit of this proclamation as much as the concerns I have for how it became inserted into our agenda. To be clear, it was confirmed, Madam Mayor, it was Councilmember Cargill who brought this to be inserted to our agenda today. Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry, with the mask on.
That's okay. I just want to be really clear. It was Councilmember Cargill who brought this to be inserted to our agenda today. Madam Mayor, in providing you this proclamation, did Mr. Cargill disclose any private or financial interest in this legislation?
No.
Councilmember Cargill, are you an employee of the Washington Policy Center?
Yes, I am. I'm not sure.
I'd like to go on,
Difference.
please. Councilmember Cargill, does your employer pay you to advocate for legislation and policy on their behalf?
No.
Councilmember Cargill, did you understand my question?
Yeah, I fully understood the question, and I don't appreciate the insinuation either.
I have a last
And-
question, Councilmember Cargill. Does your employer seek the passage of House Bill 1772, Senate Bill 5909, and Senate Bill 5039?
Are we in favor of either of any of them? Is that what you're asking?
I'll clarify. Does your employer seek the passage or advocate for House Bill 1772, Senate Bill 5909, and Senate Bill 5039?
We didn't seek the passage of any legislation. If you're asking me if we're in favor of emergency reform powers, or in reforming emergency powers, then the answer is yes. Are we in favor of any specific piece of legislation? No.
I'll be clarifying. Can I right now on your employer's website find advocating writing in support of these bills?
In support of emergency powers reform, yes.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I find this to be a profound conflict of interest, specifically that was not disclosed in the introduction of this agenda item. I ask that this agenda item be struck.
I know our city attorney is on the line, Sean. Could you address Councilmember Dunn's request? I just want to make sure I'm following proper.
Mayor, I think from the standpoint of proclamations under the new rules, all three proclamations were to come before the council as far as a vote. If it wants to be struck, then there would just simply need to be a motion and a second and a vote amongst the council to strike it. But I think how the new rules under the council is simply to vote in favor or not of whether or not the mayor would sign the proclamation. And so if they want to be struck, it would just simply be a vote of the council.
Okay, so state your point.
We've already approved the agenda, so why would we strike anything from the agenda at this point?
Yeah. I'll
Really, it
clarify
should be-
to make a direct statement.
Councilmember Follier has the floor. Just a moment, please. Go ahead.
So
Let me address that, Mayor. It's not a question of striking the agenda item. It's just a striking or removing or disapproving an item that is on the agenda that the council has decided in voting that they do not want to consider. You can do that, or you can simply vote against it. I think either way would work for the council, depending on what they want to do.
Councilmember Dunn, go ahead.
I would look to a vote of this council regarding the merit of this proclamation. Personally, I can't even consider it for the way that it has arrived at our attention.
We appreciate that. So, and this is one of the reasons last year we started on our proclamations, bring it before the council for a motion, second discussion, and then a vote. So we appreciate your comments, Councilmember Dunn. And so we'll see if there's anybody else who wants to weigh in. Okay, first, I think I saw Councilmember Baird first, and then Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With respect to this proclamation, had Councilmember Cargill not brought it forward, I would have. For the simple reason that emergency power reform is a nonpartisan issue. And it is an issue that impacts not only the city of Liberty Lake, but every citizen within our jurisdiction. As elected officials, we cannot have blinders on to only focus on Liberty Lake. We also are part of the great state of Washington. As such, we cannot have such tunnel vision that we ignore what's happening in our state. As Councilmember Cargill said, this is not a partisan issue. This is about upholding the Constitution of Washington and the United States that I took an oath on in January. The Constitution of Washington, the Constitution of our land, calls for separation of powers, and it does call for checks and balances. When our government is not adhering to that, it is our duty to address that in any way possible. And while a proclamation is not binding, I think it sends a message that we are doing what we can to uphold the Constitution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kurtz, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some comments and a few points of concern about the proclamation. And some of it centers around a little bit of what Councilmember Baird just talked about. I think the first thing, I understand the comments that we've received from the community regarding checks and balances. And what my difference though is I believe that not to be a city issue. I believe that to be an individual issue. I believe that this does affect our residents, but I don't believe that it is a city business issue. Regarding the purpose of a proclamation, one of the comments from our citizens today that we received was in line with one of my questions about this proclamation. So I thought it was unusual to see this in a proclamation because any proclamation that we have seen or put forward for the city of Liberty Lake while I've been on the council has been more of a celebratory thing, or like a fire awareness week or cancer awareness week, or something along those lines versus a statement of position of the city. And so I did do a little bit of research on proclamations across the state. And I did find it interesting that there are a number of cities across the state of Washington that have policies and procedures about proclamations and what they should entail and what they should not entail. With our rules of procedure, and that maybe we are lacking a little bit in some direction for that. But the majority of proclamations across the state and a number of sister cities talked about it being a benefit to the city, celebratory, nonpartisan, doesn't support pending legislation, doesn't have policy implications, and an official city position on cause or occasion is not part of that, particularly restricting issues of matters of political controversy. See Pasco, celebrating extraordinary achievements of citizens, honoring occasions of importance, increasing public awareness. So while as I mentioned, I have a number of other cities if anybody's interested, but while our city is silent in our rules and procedures about the scope and purpose and the procedure for that, not necessarily the procedure, but the scope and purpose, the precedent that we have set so far is about adhering to the same content that many of our sister cities outline. Another point, what kind of along what Ms. Baird mentioned, is that this is a nonpartisan office. This is a nonpartisan council. We took the same oath of office. Some of us listened a month ago, as Ms. Baird referenced. The first part of that is that I will support the laws of the state of Washington. That doesn't include laws that we don't agree with. It's all the laws of the state of Washington. The second part that was important to me is that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office to the best of my ability. Impartial definition, unbiased, neutral, independent, open-minded, balanced, non-aligned, nonpartisan, without favor. So I do share some of the concerns that Councilmember Dunn has brought forward. I believe the Washington Policy Center has their own legislative agenda, their own private interest, and so does each member of this council. We as individuals have our own private interests, our own thoughts and opinions on the topic, and so does each citizen within our community. But I think that The individual interests need to remain distinct from the work of this nonpartisan council. When we allow the overlap, which I feel that we've had great interest, great comment from citizens, both for and against this. I don't want there to be any sort of appearance of bias that reflects on this council. So I don't feel that we should be taking on what perception of partisan issues, whether we agree with what the content is or not. There was also a comment made about making sure that we're focusing on our core functions. Our core functions are legislation, making policies and passing laws through ordinance, making policies, making laws, and budget oversight. They are not commenting on the effectiveness of the state government. So I do share some concerns regarding a conflict of interest. And I think that if there is any conflict of interest, it does need to be disclosed on the open record in transparency today. And so I'm hoping that if there is any conflict of interest, perceived or otherwise, that the people that might have a conflict of interest, if we get to a vote on this proclamation, will recuse themselves from voting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Questions? I don't see any more hands. Scanning, Councilmember Foley.
Yeah, I'll say, Mayor, I'll add a little bit to the conversation. I too have read the emails that we've all received. While I totally understand the intent of what is being presented, and I have no issues with any of it. I agree with all of it. However, I don't think a proclamation is the proper tool to use to get that across. Councilmember Kurt said, historically, proclamation has been to bring awareness to the citizens of the city regarding national awareness, state awareness, local awareness regarding different general topics. I don't know that I'm interested in this body starting to use proclamations as a way to weigh in on legislative effort. However, I agree with all of it. I just don't know the proclamations are the proper tool for it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Van Loren.
Normally I would weigh in with the fact that proclamations are used for many things, but you're right. A resolution would probably be more in tune with what we were trying to say. Thank you for everyone writing in. I too agree with the proclamation as for what the content is, but I believe it needs to be a resolution. Thank you.
All right. So I would just for clarity, the original request from Councilmember Cargill was for a resolution. However, due to the time sensitivity, we did not have time to get that together. And it usually procedurally in the past, before a resolution, we need several council members to approve to bring the resolution forward, which requires a workshop beforehand. So trying to be creative with this to get it in front of you is how this leads us to the proclamation. And I know what the dates are, what, the 15th.
The cutoff is this week. There is a committee hearing on this for executive session. Actually, committee hearing was yesterday. There's executive session on this on Friday, which is on Thursday, which is part of the reason why the mayor and I talked about ways we could get it in front of you before it starts to move or dies, either or any of these pieces in the state legislature. I do want to say, I think part of the great thing about being an elected official and a city council member, and part of the camaraderie I would hope that we all have, is that we don't question or impugn other people's motives when they bring things like this forward. And I feel like that's what's happening here tonight. I just want to make extremely clear, in my day job, I do not get extra credit or extra benefits for situations like this. The only reason this is being brought forward, the only reason is because I believe it is important for our 3 legislators that represent our city, Representative Chase, Representative McCaslin, and Senator Haddon, to have some say in the process. I also believe it's important for the citizens to have some say in the process. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a proclamation or a resolution, but right now, our citizens and our elected officials in our city are being cut out of the process. And that is why I thought it was important to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So one more chance for further comment before I call for the vote, Mayor Pro Tem.
I certainly support the opportunity for any council member to bring something forward they feel is important, as I also support the council to decide if they want to continue on that or table it. When I read this, there are parts of this that I agree with as an individual, as I was a council citizen. There are also parts of this that I don't agree with as a citizen and also as a council member. So based on that, my idea was something like this would warrant, if the council so decides, the majority to do a workshop on this. But I understand that there's times of the ethics, which eliminates that recommendation. So, thank you.
All right, any other comments before I call for the vote? Okay, so all in favor of supporting proclamation before you, please say aye and raise your hand too, so I can make sure I get the proper votes. Aye. And all of those opposed, please keep your hands up. No committees have it, 5-2. I will say that there is still a chance for us, for those who support it and the residents, to actually, you can either submit a written comment or sign up to do public testimony through the legislature. And I'll see if there's a proper place, if it is proper for us to post that link. I'll check with the city attorney before we do that. Councilmember Van.
We have in the past brought up to pass a resolution with 3 or more council members being able to take care of that now, but it doesn't quite meet the emergency status. So while I would support a resolution, don't know if we can do it on an emergency basis.
We do have emergency ordinances, but I don't.
Yeah.
We've already had an emergency resolution, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do have the option, because I did make a statement as clear as that time is of the essence on this, so probably wouldn't be able to have a workshop. But I just want to remind everybody that it is the option of anybody who is on the quote winning side, which I really don't care for that term at times, winning side, failing side, prevailing side, that's much better, thank you, better adjective, has the ability to bring this back. And a prime example is tonight, when you look at under action items number 8. So that's a good example, is that if somebody chose to bring this back for a workshop at a later date, even though time has slipped away on getting some information, it is a possibility.
All right. So I think that is it for our announcements, proclamations, and special presentations. We are on to reports and inquiries. Do we have any city council reports? Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay? I know my microphone was a little slow earlier. Okay. So I had the opportunity last week to attend City Action Days and also to attend a training session through AWC on great council meetings. So I wanted to give a little bit of an update on those 2 things and one other item. City Action Days last week, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but we had the opportunity to hear from a panel of our senators and representatives with the topics of transportation, middle housing, and civility. And we got to hear from Senator Braun, Billig, and Representatives Wilcox and Jenkins. Hopefully I got the right names and the right rules. But I really appreciated their candor and their directness on what the positions were, what they were advocating for. They were all really great to listen to on those topics. We also had the chance to hear from Governor Inslee for about a half an hour or so as well, kind of on the state of things that they're working on as far as middle housing and COVID work. The other thing that I attended was great city council meetings. And I wanted to pass on my one nugget of knowledge, and it's a little bit of a myth buster probably for some of us, or something maybe that at least I did not pick up on in our Jurassic Parliament piece with Ann McFarland that we did, I think, last year. One of the things that came up is sometimes when we say we want to call the question, and I think that there is a conception that when you call the question, all debate ends and you guys we would go to a vote. And it was clarified in that calling the question, there still needs to be a 2/3 majority who agrees to end discussion before moving forward. So that was one thing that I learned. Maybe I didn't learn it the first time, but something that I've heard us talk about in calling the question. And I think the expectation has been that the discussion would end. But the training itself was a great refresher. There were definitely some new things that I learned there. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is we had the opportunity to have another meeting and demonstration on the Thought Exchange platform. We've talked about that a little bit with community engagement. So we had Councilmember Dunn, myself, Jen Camp, and Lisa Key there today, and talking about how we could potentially move forward with kind of the demo that they have offered us. So we had some questions. We had some, I think, interesting ideas at the end of that meeting on a way to engage the council and trying out the platform and actually using the platform to come up with some thoughts around Trailhead. So stay tuned for that, because we'll see if it's actually logistically possible, because of open public meetings, we need to have that, and how that intersects with a Thought Exchange, a platform. So that is it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else? Councilmember Dunn and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Hey, yeah, I just want to thank specifically Lisa and Jen taking busy time out of their day to get a look at this application. In Great Commit, they don't have a ton of time. And so if this were to be put to use for engagement, and that's what I think I see its principal use as, we do our best to try and not put a significant burden on staff. So we'll continue to brainstorm how we can put this to use to get people to engage over the topic of our project.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was able to attend also to the meetings, which Councilman Kurtz mentioned, and I really want to confirm that she did hear it correctly. I made a note that also when it comes to calling the question. So Ann McFarland does a very good job with her little rubber toys, as we say. Dinosaurs on that. So I do appreciate that. I would like to make a comment about the thought process when you refer to that, is that this last year, there was a time that organization did give a demonstration to any of the council members that wanted to see that. I know Councilman, there were several of us on that one at the time. It didn't go any further with the idea to bring it to the council for a discussion. I think, first of all, that would warrant what I would throw out a workshop or something like that. There is a tremendous cost involved in that. It was a free demonstration, which I certainly wouldn't not say yes to that, because I think it was beneficial. It did bring up questions at the time that it has been used in other cities. But the main question I had, can it be centralized for the Liberty Lake citizens? And no, it cannot. So the other concern I would have is that we are years into Trailhead. Years. And we still can't make a decision, because we don't know where we're going with everything that is here. And part of the reason I think that Councilman Foley wants to discuss tonight is to try to get further focus on how we can move forward. Although I think that program has great merit in certain degrees, I am concerned that suddenly we start to introduce something else to involve citizens when we've had, since the first notes I have, the first committee I was on with Trailhead goes back 7 to 8 years. So moving forward, I hope that we can use some common sense so we can narrow in our decision on Trailhead and not bring something new in that simply slows process down. Thank you.
All right. City council reports. All right, none. Mayor's report. I kind of have a lot, so I will do my best to consolidate it as we go. Thanks Councilmember Kurtz and Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy, for your great synopsis of the city act of what was it? The virtual flight, the city action days, whatever. They run together this time of year, some of the
Yes.
legislative updates and the great council meetings with Ian McFarland. I think I go to that almost every year, and my memory is refreshed, and I remember things that I forgot every time I go. Just a couple quick things, more things for the council just to keep in mind as we go through our meetings. So on the point of, on the call to question, it actually requires a second as well. It cannot be debated or amended, and like Councilmember Kurtz said, it takes 2/3 vote to pass. So I will pay closer attention to that going forward. If we do have somebody call a question, we'll get a second and we'll have a vote on that. A couple other quick little things with regards to point of order. I know we have that now and then, but what I haven't done as the meeting chair is ask what the point is. Usually I kind of know where the person's going, but we need to make sure that we have that stated. Talked a lot about, it was really interesting as I was going through the 136 some pages of Ian McFarland's presentation. The repeating theme, courtesy and respect towards everyone are required. I would challenge everybody to keep that in mind as we go through our meetings. The other thing, you can't speak against your own motion. So if you motion something to move forward, you can't speak against it, which is always very interesting. I think that's really most of it. There's a lot to it, but I won't go through all of that. I did send out my mayor's report earlier today, and I've already lost it. There we go. We will see on a future agenda, and I need to get with Chief on this, a presentation and discussion on the Fox safety camera system that I was able to sit in the presentation for, and really looking forward to getting that in front of you guys. The opportunity for a free 6-month trial, so we can gather data for the council to make a decision on possibly moving forward with that with a contract. Some more trainings, MRSC conflict resolution skills. Did that last week. Let's see, we did planning commission interviews. You have the confirmations on today's agenda. GSI legislative update. The big thing that came out of that and some of the other updates from last week is that the governor did sign the 18-month delay in the long-term care premium by 18 months, and also signed a host of exemptions to long-term care. There was a lot of things in there with regards to time periods and residency. I won't get into the whole thing because I'll just confuse everybody. Tomorrow, I get to do something fun. I get to judge the Future Business Leaders of America Regional Championship competition. So I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem stepping into for me on the exit conference for our audit. I hear it went really well, but unfortunately I made the commitment to this prior to that meeting request. And then I think the last thing on that, I am traveling to Olympia next week for the AWC Mayor's Exchange. It's the first time in a couple of years they've had it in person. So looking forward to that. And this last thing on my agenda here for tonight is just a reminder of the timing on getting things submitted for the agenda review. I reread, and I promised to have with me at every meeting going forward the rules of procedure, because again, long document, hard to memorize everything. But we do have really a noon deadline on Wednesdays before the meeting to get things to Kelsey for the agenda preparation, especially if it's things like things that Sean needs to go through, because he needs time to get through it before the agenda is put forth. So I have talked enough for my mayor's report. Jen, you're up with city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This evening, I have a few more things than I normally do to update you on, and we'll kick it off with Lisa and Kyle on a trailhead, just a brief trailhead update.
Yeah, I thank you, Mayor, council members. I did just want to come back and kind of give you a status update. We are in the process of getting the ball trajectory study completed by Tanner. And we are working on cost estimates. We do have someone scheduled, the structural engineer that we need to take a look at the existing pools for the netting. Could not make it out until next week, but we should have his information back in time for Kyle and I to then circle back with risk management and be able to present some different information, different scenarios for you at a workshop on February 15th. So we apologize that a lot of legwork and a lot of different pieces from different people that are needed to fit together to answer the questions that you raised at the last meeting.
And just to add on to that, there was an ask of council at the last meeting as well to study up on different scenarios involving different down payments and how that would affect the annual payments kind of going forward. And so we'll go into that a little bit more in detail on the 15th. But I can just give you verbally some numbers. And so what we had kind of been zoning in on is this 20-year bond. And regardless of what we're looking to put down, we can tweak that if council is comfortable doing so. If we want to put 3 million down instead of 2 million down, that would save us about 65,000 a year in those annual payments. The only thing I will caution against, and we'll get into the numbers a little bit more next week, is the general fund is used, for a million different things, most notably like the different projects that we have going on. So there are some cash flow considerations where, if you have a perfect storm of we're drawing down 3 million initially for Trailhead, and then we're drawing down some for help for the Kramer overpass, all of a sudden, we could have as much as 5 million in, short-term cash flow that is tied up. And so that's a concern that we can get into a little bit next week, but I just wanted to relay that to councils to get your, to have you understand there's different kind of factors at play when we're talking about that. Obviously, it is a great thing to consider trying to get as much down as we possibly can. And we'll get into that a little bit more next week as well. So.
Okay.
Jen, we've got a question from Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question back. Lisa, you mentioned the projectile study. Is there a cost involved in that?
Yes, it's already under contract. I want to say that it was $3,700 or something like that. It was under 5,000.
And why I asked that is that we already have that company who gave us a study, I believe, actually 2 years ago. I would be curious why we're asking for another study. If we need update, I certainly would support that. But we do have that document. Can I finish? Thank you. If we already have that study and we've spent money for it, I would think that it would be behooved the committee to look at that, just to bring it to the council. Do we need a new one? If we do need a new one, I certainly support that. But when I see that we do have documentation and study, and possibly we're not going back and looking at that, then I have to question as a council, are we spending our money properly? Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Mayor Pro Tem, the reason that we are doing that is because we are looking at a more efficient layout as it relates to pools and netting. And we have, and so we're trying to look at another option that will actually save money from the original configuration that he evaluated. That's what's happening here. That was already under contract, underway. Prior to our last meeting, we just didn't have the results back yet. And so again, we're looking at several different scenarios that we'll be able to present to you on the 15th with the cost information and some different ways to approach the that issue.
Thank you for your answer.
Thanks, Lisa.
Okay. Anything else?
Looks like we're good.
Okay, I guess I'm next up with the with the Meadowwood Tech Campus zone change. So I've been in contact with Greenstone, and they are interested in getting a date on the calendar in March for the to bring forward the hearing before City Council on the proposed zone change. And so we had talked about this back early in the year, that because of the time involved with the public hearing, that we feel like even though having it at the 6 o'clock workshop does not provide enough time to have both the hearing and then the deliberations, because it does require reasoned deliberations from council, who is acting as the decision-making body here. So hoping that we could maybe identify a date, a potential date for a special meeting in March for that hearing.
Lisa, is that something you want us to discuss a date now, or can we talk about it when we get to future agenda items later on in the meeting?
We can talk about it when we get to future agenda items. I just wanted to make council aware that it is timely now to look at scheduling that hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dunn.
Just
Or-
if, before we conclude in the report section, if we could return to Mayor Chris, I had a question, just when that comes back.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, just Chris, do you have any updates on the city administrator search?
What's up next? You're reading our
That's up.
minds.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kyle, would you like to provide a brief update on the city administrator search?
Absolutely. Perfect timing.
Thank you.
So as we hit reset on our city administrator search, I have reached out to 3 separate executive recruitment firms. And so to date, I have heard back from 2. The third one, actually, I heard back from all 3. The third one did indicate that they were too busy at the moment to really respond to our request. So I've reached out to 2 more, and you will see on the agenda for the 15th, different proposals for council consideration to engage those executive recruitment firms and proceed from there.
So if you would expect a workshop earlier in that meeting to go through those proposals. Right, thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Foyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Are we hanging our hat on that going forward, or are we gonna throw in everything in the kitchen sink as far as other alternative ways to advertise, get some interest?
Typically, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically once you sign with one of these firms, they run with it. And I think there's probably some sort of understanding, if not contractual obligation, to not go out and do your own search. Is that correct, Kyle?
So what would happen? We would pay them regardless if we ended up hiring somebody through them or not. So they're going to lead the discussion, lead the recruitment, lead the advertising, and they will engage council and mayor and staff along that process. But yeah, so they are going to run with it, and then we are going to support them, as we need. And so what we've talked about, and we'll get into this a little bit further next week, is kind of a hybrid approach. So what you think of when you think of executive recruitment firm, they take it from front to back. They do absolutely everything. What we can try to do is pare that down a little bit and maybe get them to get us a qualified pool of candidates, something along those lines, and have us go from there versus having them, do absolutely everything start to finish.
And some of the firms actually get to the point where they actually hand you your last, this is who
Correct.
you're gonna hire.
Yeah.
We don't want that. Sure, thank you.
Okay, if that is all for city administrator, we'll move on to number 4, the technology update that Kyle is going to provide.
Absolutely. And so Todd has been working really diligently on getting different pieces of equipment into council chambers for us to deliver a better product. to council and our residents. And so I want Todd, if he's available, speak a little bit more on what precisely we're looking at in terms of upgrades and how we're starting to engage Granicus in some of our implementations.
We basically contacted the installer that installed the camera and the Granicus system. We had him come in, we explained what we wanted to do to get Zoom integrated with Granicus. He helped us get that equipment already set up. We plan to do a test run through next Tuesday with one of our meetings, and then contact Granicus as far as getting I legislate for the bookcast portion process through, and learn to get the recordings set up through Granicus, and we'll be going live with it within a couple of weeks.
And may I add that we did a very brief test run this morning. We did my office on, I don't know if it was Zoom or Granicus, but like a Zoom meeting, and they were in the council chambers, and it was fantastic. The people who spoke in council chambers up against a microphone sounded like they were standing right next to me in my office. And the background chatter for, let's just say, those sitting in the council meeting that weren't on a microphone, you couldn't hear them at all. So I think it's very exciting.
Nice. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, Councilmember Collier.
Thank you, and we've talked about this a little bit. So one of the things I'm looking forward to, and I'm seeing it on my screen right here as I talk, that this Granicus product will zoom in on whoever's speaking. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what that's going to allow, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but what that's going to allow me to do is not have half of my screen with the Zoom window open and be able to have my prepared documents to open. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So my computer would not need to be on Zoom any longer with this product.
That is correct.
Then one other thing I'd like to see as an end result of this is I would like to see who's all on the meeting. So is there somewhere we can look in the room and see that Tom Solberg has joined us?
Yeah, we'll have that on these big screens here.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thanks for your work on it, Todd. Good news on the test run.
Okay, David has an update, not such an update, on the Kramer Overpass winter vacation. David.
Yes.
Real quick, just 2 seconds. Councilmember Baird had a question.
I am so sorry, but Todd, what is the anticipated go live date with that integration?
I'm hoping to go live within 2 weeks, so the 15th of February.
Awesome, good to hear.
That'll be our first run through on the meeting.
We'll ask grace from the public
Yes,
as we.
that's right.
So,
Thank you, that was all.
great. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No worries. Okay. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. Yeah, right now the construction crews are basically in the downtime of construction season. They will be off, and we've actually ramped down our weekly meetings to 2 weeks as well. They'll be off until about mid-March, late March, depending upon weather, but also procurement of materials as well. So you will see a lot less activity out there, but there are things happening behind the scenes at a little bit less of an interval as well too. So things are still going. It's just we're just on break.
Thank you.
Any questions on that? If not, Lisa, do you want to provide a quick update on the blasting?
Yeah, so DR Horton is working on the subdivision at Legacy Ridge West, and specifically installing a water line for a water tank. And as part of that project, they do need to do some blasting. It is scheduled for tomorrow, February 2nd at 3 p.m. They only anticipate doing one blast, and they will sound a horn 3 times before the blast goes off. We have put it on our website, out on social media, sent it out to notify me lists. We've notified the police dispatch, the fire district, the school district. So we've shouted it from the rooftops. And hopefully it'll only be one blast. but we didn't want people to not be aware that it was a planned explosion.
Question, Lisa. Sorry if I missed it, but did you get the high school in there too? Do they know?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Seeing that it's next door. Magic.
Okay.
Boy.
Okay, moving on to, received an email a little while back from the folks at Ridgeline High School wanting to do a partnership with local businesses here in town with something called Shop Loco or Verde Loco. They're celebrating this partnership throughout the month of March. I don't have a ton of details yet from them on what this is going to look like, but we met with them, and I did share that the city would be interested in supporting the students any way we possibly can, most likely through like notifications and sending out of information on this program. So as we get more details, I'll keep you posted and keep you updated on that, on the details of what that's going to look like. And then lastly, events and reminders. The Friends of the Liberty Lake Library have their Valentine's gift baskets auction that started today, and the registration for that runs through the 10th. And then City Hall and Library will be closed on President's Day. There is going to be a town hall meeting from the McMorris Rogers group that is going to be held at City Hall on the 24th at, I believe, 1 p.m. I do want to emphasize it is not a city-sponsored event. They just asked to use the facility. And I also did bounce that off of Sean just to make sure that we weren't crossing any lines or had any issues with that. So he was supportive of that situation. And then Kiwanis father-daughter dance, we are hoping it will go off this year. I think probably for the first time, Dan, in 2 years on March 5th.
Oh, we're in. We are so there.
Yeah.
Come on.
Not backing out. So if there are no, go ahead.
Where is it this year, Dan?
We are our gracious host, the Marabou Park Hotel, and tickets are for sale now, along with packages to be able to have a dinner and a date. So really want to encourage everybody. This is a really important event, and we're very excited to be able to host it. So thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Any more questions? Or move on from City Administrator? Councilmember Van Orman.
Want to remind everybody that February is Black History Month.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
we'll be doing that on social media as well. Super.
Thank
Right
you
on.
for that. All right. If we don't have any more comments on City Administrator reports, we'll move into workshops. First one that we've moved a couple times is representation on advisory boards, and I compiled some information that Todd's going to share. All right, so the first piece of what you're going to see are boards and commissions that we already have representation on. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. The Valley Chamber, the mayor holds an ex officio seat on that board. Greater Spokane Inc., same, mayor has an ex officio board seat on that. There are several subcommittees that are open, that I go to, but are also open to any of the other members who'd like to go. And there are some other committees that staff attends, like the Advantage Spokane, Lisa goes to that, and some others. Visit Spokane, mayor holds a board member seat on that. There is a holiday marketing committee. It was kind of an impromptu thing in 2021. So if any of the council is looking for a way to contribute, we happily, it was a great group to be part of, but if somebody wants some experience with Visit Spokane and you want to be involved in that holiday marketing committee later this year, just let me know. SRTC, I'm board member on that, and there are lots of subcommittees with an alphabet soup of acronyms that I couldn't even begin to go through. Lisa is representative on most of those. Growth Management Steering Committee, that's a once a quarter meeting where we go through some discussions on, a lot of times there's land swaps for the Growth Management Act, but given that the Growth Management Act will open back up in 2025 for some changes. This group's going to make quite a bit more active this year. And it is this year's president or board chair is Brian Beggs from Spokane City. Okay, Todd, if you want to go to the next one. Spokane Transit Authority. So this brings one action that we want to try to get to tonight. So I know Mayor Pro Tem has served as the representative on the Spokane Transit Authority board for several years now. And so they are waiting for a decision from us on the representative and an alternate. So Mayor Pro Tem, if you just want to go high level, very brief, what the activity is, how often they meet, responsibilities. And so we'll be looking for somebody to volunteer to be that liaison and a backup as well.
Absolutely. The STA is a huge organization. What I would point out is what's most unique is they're totally debt-free, which is quite unique in itself. The commitment there, they have 2 meetings a month. One is having to do with service and maintenance and things of that sort there. You're also on the board. I've been involved in both of those. The first is last year. We had another council member that took that responsibility on for a period of time. I was more than willing to be an alternate on that. I think it's advisory as you move forward because there is time involved with this one. We do not have a vote at this point, but that vote rotates. I think it's probably another 2 years that we will have a vote. But what's important to realize that for the STA, it's not a matter of we have a vote, we have a voice. Because sometimes the voice is much stronger than the vote on it. One individual can go to both of those. It's educational, it's an advantage. We do have some of the individuals that live right here in this town that run that whole organization. So at this point, I've had that for 4 years. Let me be completely clear, it will not happen again. But I would certainly volunteer to be an alternate at times that individuals cannot attend. They're still meeting Zoom for right now. They are in the process of working to be in person. And when you do go, is the STA building downtown area.
And Mike, Mayor Pro Tem, sorry, there was meeting the third Thursday of the month, 1:30 to 3:30.
Yes.
Okay, so make sure I still had that right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know on some of these times where somebody else would not be able to attend on a regular basis, that this is one organization where I think it's really great to have an alternate who can do that because both individuals can work together. And the benefit is when somebody takes that position on, it's not like you're just there and you don't know what's going on. We will have alternates in the future as we put somebody else in who takes that position. The alternate can help out, educate their group. Thank you.
All right, so I'd love to see a show of hands for somebody willing to take this on. Councilmember
Pick
Dodd,
me,
fantastic.
pick me, pick me.
So the first hand raised, I don't see anybody else.
Come on. Hey.
Well, and it's, and I don't know if you're back in the office yet, Councilmember Dunn, but I'm sure that that's quite convenient for you as well.
Hey, with gracious thanks to Mike for his service, I'm happy to carry the torch. You got to give me some lessons, but we're going to figure this out.
I love it. I love it.
So do we have any objection from the council for Councilmember Dunn? Okay, so do we just need to, can I say if there are no objections are in? So seeing if there are no
Unanimous
objections.
consent.
Yes, we will appoint Councilmember Dunn to the STA board. And now I'll call for alternates. I know Mayor Pro Tem said he would do that, but it's gonna be me. Is anybody else interested? Just throw. All right, seeing none, and if there are no objections, we will put Mayor Pro Tem as the alternate. All right, there are a couple more things on this list though, real quick. I'm glad to have that over, and I'll shoot a note over to them tomorrow, make sure we get that done. The lodging tax, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead with the lodging things.
In the past, quite a while ago, the mayor sat on that. I think it's great to have a council representative instead. That is a board that decides every year on what organizations the lodging tax funds are distributed to for helping to put heads in beds. The money comes from the tax collected from our local hoteliers. It's a pass through. It's made up of the hoteliers that are on there, and I forgot who else is all on the board. So I think they meet once a year, once or twice at the max. So I'd love to have somebody step up and be part of that board. Oh, we got question?
I'm not stepping up to volunteer, but this is that if you'll notice on the to be determined, this last year I asked to be put on the to be determined, this organization. And also to point out, because we don't have a meeting until the latter part of this year to hold up on appointing somebody there. And the recommendation was to have a workshop based on some of the comments of recipients and non-recipients have brought up over the last couple of years of the structure of that organization, who makes the decisions. And one thing was brought up, the possibility of a conflict of interest. And that's why I requested a workshop. So I would recommend that we have a workshop before we move forward to have an appointment there.
Is there any objection to that? We can put a workshop on that, what, mid-year?
Yes.
Okay. Look at that.
After Trailhead.
Yeah. I'll be to it. Mike.
Very good.
Okay, then yeah, I do hate to say that we've got another couple pages. So the Regional Mayors Association is not quite as small anymore, but we have been meeting pretty much on a monthly basis. Mayors all the way from Pullman to Colfax out to Medical Lake, and Nadine Woodward's office hosts that. Okay, the next one real quick. These are just some additional possible boards and commissions that I was working with Spokane Valley on. I don't have the details. I didn't spend the time yet to find out, you know, how we get on it, what the representation is. I wanted to hear from you guys first, if you want to meet us to dig into this a little bit more. The first is the Aging and Long-Term Care of Eastern Washington Governing Board, Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency, Continuing Care for the Homeless, Spokane City and County. And I know I'm running through this fast. Todd, can you go to the next page where we start? There you go. And I'm on the next one. Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee. AWC has, I didn't list anything with them because they have always had various board and commission openings throughout the year. So I encourage you to go to their website and see what might be open. United States Conference for Mayors, that's kind of pricey. I'm going to get some more information on that. I don't know how much good that would do us. National League of Cities, the city is a member. We just did that a year or two ago. Again, lots of committees and advisory groups with regards to that organization, just like there is for AWC. And I'm actually going to the Congressional City Conference in March for that. So I don't think we really need to go through all of these. What I'd like to do is have the council go through them. If you want to email Kelsey and I and copy Jen, if you guys are interested in us getting more information about these to see how we might participate, then we can take the next step. I didn't want to waste staff time if it's not something you guys are interested in. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recommend that this list be sent out to all the council members.
Yep.
So if they're leisure, they could look at that.
Yep.
Could you go back to Spokane Valley Chamber? That was near the top there.
Yes, very first. Top of the document there. No, keep going up to the top. There you go.
Yeah, Valley Chamber. I've spoken in reference to this in the past. This is one that if somebody looks at this as a hard sell, I agree it is. I really strongly recommend for council members, if you can get involved to attend any of these type of meetings, especially the Government Action Committee meeting. I really have to emphasize that is a great meeting to get involved with there. There is no requirement other than you're a council member to attend. It used to be that we had, the mayor was on the board and then we had an alternate for that. They've since changed that because it really got to be so many individuals at the meeting, it wasn't necessary. The benefit of the Government Action Committee is a lot of time and effort is spent along a period of time of the members of Spokane Valley Chamber, which is about 600 and some members. And I've mentioned in the last meeting is that one reason I attend that is because economic development to me is very critical in this town. They have over 600 members. They all have one thing in common. They're either own businesses or they work for businesses. And you're able to go to these luncheons, attend these meetings, see what they're champion for the state and for the legislators. That has very importance to it. And it's just an educational thing for us. You go to the luncheon, you're able to hand out cards. you're introduced, you'd be amazed how many people who have businesses, who work for other businesses, will approach you and say, oh, tell me about Liberty Lake. I hear you guys are growing. I hear this, I hear that, I hear Trailhead. It's just a great opportunity. So that is one I really would push for council members, that if you can attend periodically, please do so.
Great.
Here, yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
So, I don't know really how to approach this, so I'll just be direct.
Okay.
One of the things that has been on my mind since I've been on the council, and something I feel we need to address, not tonight, but at some point, and I'd like us to address it this year, I don't know when. And one of the things that is not on this list is some representation on our own sewer and water district.
Okay.
I feel like that's important. We have, I have yet to see how we exchange information or interact or communicate with our sewer district, other than I get a bill every month like everybody else.
So we do have staff that attends the board meetings, but we will bring back some additional information.
Yeah, I just have felt for a long time it's important that we have some council participation there, and I would volunteer to do it.
Let's gather some information. I don't want to put anybody on the spot at the meeting, but we'll take that action.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so if there's no more
Hey, if I could
questions
make an
on that-
observation.
Go ahead, Councilmember Dunn.
Hey, just to Councilmember Foyer's point, actually, Phil, yes, have attended several of the district commissioner meetings. They're not quite like, well, maybe they're more boring than ours. No, but I just say that attending their meetings is very informative and very conversational, and gives you a great feel for the conditions in which they work. I do liberally take the moment then to try and provide insight as my perspectives personally, and the staff members do a great job of addressing what are questions directly from the district staff about what things are going on. So that's been my experience.
Thank you for that input. I really appreciate it. All right. Okay, so moving on to the local income tax ban proposal, and I will turn the microphone back over to Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Todd, can I share my screen here? Sure. Okay, all right. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I asked for this to be brought forward for a couple of reasons that I'll discuss here tonight, and I'm hoping that we will consider putting it on a future agenda. And yes, I did ask for it to be brought forward. So let me bring kind of an overview of the issue here. Obviously, Washington State and our local cities all across the state and our counties have a competitive advantage that we do not have an overall income tax at either the state level or the local level. That is a big deal. Washington and Liberty Lake voters have made it very clear they do not want an income tax of any kind. In fact, they've said it 10 times, which I'll show you here in a moment. The city of Seattle has really galvanized this conversation based on what it did in 2017. Before 2017, this really wouldn't have been an issue. But what happened in the city of Seattle, which we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes, is the reason why this is being brought forward. And what's happening in the state legislature, again, is the reason why this is being brought forward, not only here, but elsewhere. So I mentioned earlier that a state income tax has been rejected by voters numerous times in 1934, 1936, 1938, 1942, 44, 70, 73, 75, 82, and most recently in 2010. And in fact, just last year, there was an advisory vote on the legislature's new capital gains income tax, and that failed overwhelmingly as well. As I mentioned, before 2017, this really wouldn't have been an issue because as the mayor knows, and as I think most of us know, RCW was very, very clear that a tax on net income is prohibited, and a county, a city, or a city county cannot levy a tax on net income. That was made clear in the RCWs. This was passed by the legislature in 1984. Fast forward to 2017, Seattle passes a local income tax specifically just on high earners. As is expected, the courts overruled that, said it was unconstitutional, but also, before I get to that, obviously your income is your property and therefore it must be uniform in our state. That is the interpretation of the state Supreme Court. But the court in that ruling also said that the 1984 prohibition, which I just showed you from the RCW on local income taxes, was void. Because apparently at that time, there was some single subject violations that the legislature was dealing with. The legislature tried to remedy this situation a couple of years ago. It introduced a couple of bills that would reinstate the ban on local income taxes, but unfortunately, they didn't really go anywhere. And this year, Senate Bill 5554 allows for local governments to adopt a graduated income tax as well. So not only could we adopt a 1% income tax based on the court ruling from the Seattle case, if this bill were to pass, we could adopt a graduated income tax. There was a hearing last week about this particular issue. Last year, as I mentioned earlier, the new state income tax was approved starting with capital gains income. There has been a lawsuit that's been filed that will actually be heard this Friday in a court in Douglas County. In 2019, the Senate tried to give local governments income tax authority. That unfortunately died in committee. And in 2017, again, the legislature tried to clarify and strengthen that ban on local income tax, but unfortunately it was rejected. That is why you're seeing this movement of cities and counties across the state adopt these local income tax resolutions or ordinances in their cities. We've seen it in 19 so far, counties and cities all together. It started in the city of Spokane and then has taken off from there. And in fact, when this has gone to voters, it has been overwhelmingly approved. So in the city of Spokane, it was on the ballot as, I believe it was Proposition 2 in 2019, and 73% supported this. And then the city of Yakima was also taken to the ballot, and 78% of voters supported it. The difference between Spokane and Yakima, obviously, the difference between Spokane and Yakima and Liberty Lake is that Spokane and Yakima are charter cities. Liberty Lake, of course, is not a charter city, so therefore we could not adopt a city charter amendment. In Spokane and Yakima, they did. So the proposal that the draft proposal that's in your packets tonight does a couple of things. It respects the will of voters. It brings Liberty Lake into parity with Spokane and Spokane Valley. Right now, we are the largest city in the county that does not have a local income tax ban or resolution of any kind. It makes the commitment in the future that no matter what the state does, we are not going to have a city income tax. Now, I just want to make clear, the state may adopt its own income tax, and there's nothing we can do about that. But in terms of what would be added on top of that, we are making a policy statement here that says we will not adopt any local income tax, regardless of what the legislature does. And of course, it sends a message to potential citizens and businesses who may be looking to relocate into Liberty Lake. So that is the reason why I brought this forward. Again, it's something that the 19 other cities and counties have done. I think it's something that we should do as well. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Cargill. I see Councilmember Dunn's hand up first. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I am again very concerned for how this item has been added to our agenda. To be clear, did Councilmember Cargill bring forward this for our consideration?
Yes, it's actually been on the future workshop schedule for a little bit. We finally just scheduled it.
Thank you. Did Councilmember Cargill disclose any private or financial interest in this legislation?
Yeah, let me, if I might, Mayor, sure. I do not have private or financial interest in any of the legislation. And again, I do not appreciate the insinuation that I do. I wouldn't ask you, Councilmember Dunn, or any other council member, based on your day job, whether you have private or financial interest in this. I would respect your position as a duly elected member of the council to come forward with that if you did. And I don't appreciate the insinuation that I do.
So
I have additional questions.
Go ahead, but I'm going to ask everybody on the council to refrain from any personal insinuations or anything sounding like an accusation. That is not what we're here for. We're here to debate topics. This is on a workshop. This is not up for a vote. What will come later is, does the council want to bring this forward for a resolution or ordinance? That's where we will be. Councilmember Dunn.
My question draws to Councilmember Cargill's interest in this legislation. It could be answered with a yes or no question. I'd ask to proceed.
All right, any other comments or questions on this proposal? Councilmember Dunn.
Councilmember Cargill, did your employer pay you to testify at a Yakima City Council meeting advocating for the very draft of the ordinance that we're considering tonight?
I am not the person on trial. This is not a court. And I am not going to sit here and pretend like you are a prosecutor and I'm on trial for this. This is an idea that is brought forward. If you do not like the idea, vote against it.
Is there a yes or no answer to the question, sir?
Again, I'm not going to answer yes or no to any of your questions anymore. You are not the prosecutor. You are not in charge of the council. I do not have to answer any of your questions. If people want to know my organization's position on this particular issue, they can visit my organization's website. That responsibility for me ends at 5 p.m. And right now it is 8:30.
No further questions, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, well,
Councilmember Kurtz, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cargill, one of the questions I had on one of your slides, it mentioned that Spokane County has adopted this already, or a ban on the income tax. I guess I have two questions. So if Spokane County has already done this, why would Liberty Lake need to do it?
thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And the reason why is because that only applies to what Spokane County commissioners could do. So if, let's say, the legislature or Spokane County or local governments wanted to adopt income taxes, you could have the possibility of a state income tax and then a county income tax and then a local city income tax on top of that, just like you do with sales taxes right now. So it would be no different than the way the sales tax is set up right now, where the city could adopt its own, the state has its own, and the county could adopt its own. So the county resolution does not apply to what we could do as a city. But we could pass a resolution next week or an ordinance next week, putting a 1% income tax on all citizens in the city of Liberty Lake. And according to the ruling that came out from the appeals court, that would be legal.
Okay. I think my other question is, I mean, I read the ordinance, I listened to the presentation. I don't know that this council has an appetite to impose a sales tax or take any advantage of that. So I'm just wondering why the importance, like why now?
This isn't necessarily an issue for now. I believe this is an issue for the future. This is a message that we're sending to citizens saying no time in the future. I realize that there's no member of this council who's ever called for an income tax. And I appreciate that. I know our citizens appreciate that. But this is about the future, saying it doesn't matter what happens in the state legislature, it doesn't matter what happens locally. We are making a policy statement here that we will not adopt, and we were committing to that we will not adopt a local income tax.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments?
I'll jump in there.
Great, Councilmember Collier.
I just have one comment about the draft. I don't know that comment about the city of Liberty Lake is the largest city in the county to have not adopted a local income tax ban. For me, it's kind of irrelevant for the ordinance, so I would ask that you strike it. Other than that, I'm good with it. Thank you.
I've got a chat message into our city attorney. Here we go. All right, so I'd asked our city attorney if this would be more suited for resolution or an ordinance. So we need further research in position of this thing. Sorry, Sean, I should just let you answer this.
Thanks, Mayor. At this point, I don't see an issue with having discussion and dialogue amongst the council. There's nothing before the council relative to an action item. Council members are able to bring forth discussion items, and at some point they'll come before the council. At that time, if there's an action to be taken, if there's a potential conflict, then a council member can disclose what that conflict may be, but I don't see an issue simply by having a discussion about it.
And the follow-up to that, Sean, would be, is this, should the council want to move forward with this, would it be a resolution or an ordinance? which would be more appropriate?
Well, certainly a resolution is in the context of a position of the council at a particular point in time in support of a particular position. If the council feels that they believe a resolution is necessary to support something, they can certainly do that. An ordinance is a law. I would need to do further research on that. So at this point, I would not necessarily say an ordinance until I've been able to look into it further.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, if I might.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I appreciate that, Sean. I think it has been done both ways, if I'm remembering correctly, in the different cities and counties. Some it's been resolutions, some it's been ordinances, and then as I mentioned in Spokane and Yakima, it was the city charter change. So I think it just depends on the appetite of the council at that time in that particular city.
And I don't, I have no ability to agree or disagree. That very well may be the case. I just would need to look into it further. Obviously, this is just a first impression for me relative to the topic.
So I guess I'm assuming, the next question would be, does someone want to move and second a request for staff to bring back ordinance, if that is appropriate, if not a resolution? If someone wants to make that motion, feel free to do that. Councilmember Van Orman.
I move to go ahead and bring forth the income tax in a form of an ordinance, making that binding. Resolutions are non-binding. And I believe that future councils, although even ordinances can be recalled, this is on the books.
We have a second.
I will second.
A second by Councilmember Baird.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to also make this point. Regardless of what we do, whether it is an ordinance or a resolution, as Councilmember Van Orman says, as a future city council could come in and change it. And that's just the way our system is. We do not have a charter in the city, so we cannot put it in stone. But any future council could come in and change it, but that would also send a message to voters and citizens that perhaps they might want to start paying attention.
Right. Understood. Okay, we have a first and a second to bring back ordinance. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My only thought would be just waiting to hear back from Sean about whether it should be an ordinance or a resolution before we lock ourselves into bringing it back as one or the other. If we could maybe get that research done from him in time for a further discussion.
So just for clarification, the motion is to bring it back as an ordinance. My assumption would be if it is not suitable to be an ordinance, then that would stop there, and then a new motion could be brought forth at that point for a resolution. Would that work, Sean?
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I've been very clear on this, is that I'm definitely in favor that the council, if we do some sort of a vote to say that we do not support an income tax for our citizens. Now, this particular ordinance, to try to be simplistic here and not get into discussing every single line, which I think is academic at this point, what I tried to do is break it in the simplest form. So I took what was proposed here and I put a number on each of the paragraphs that I refer to paragraphs, and there's 10. So having said that, what I would be supportive of, if you put a number on each of these paragraphs, 1 through 10, would be paragraph 1, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Now, because of time constraints, I don't want to get into individual discussion, pros and cons on this, but the thing I'm not interested in is if any verbiage brought to us in the future that implies, in my opinion, or the citizens' opinion, that this is somehow political by using terms such as what Seattle has done or the court in Kuna, things of the sort here, I will not be supportive of this. I think it's very simple verbiage that we do not support this. I really like the verbiage in here that has been brought to the citizens 10 times in the state, and 10 times we said no. Legislature keeps coming back. Now, they can do that as long as they want to, but I do like the idea that it's been brought to us 10 times. We've said 10 times no. Other than that, I'm going to be very, very critical and concerned how the verbiage comes back from staff, council, because I think that will add more debate, and discussion. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilmember Paul.
I just have one comment on the ordinance versus resolution.
Sure.
Before the meeting, I looked up to see what the differences are. In my mind, this is straightforward an ordinance for the simple fact that you got to have some courage as a future council to even consider changing something like this.
That's right.
So that would be my sole reason for making it an ordinance.
Right.
Our attorney can look into it, but I feel like our council can decide if it should be an ordinance or a resolution.
Yeah, well, the motion is to bring it back as an ordinance. If our city attorney does his research and finds that it is not suited for an ordinance, then we can talk about the resolution. But yeah, definitely an ordinance has more teeth, more staying, a little bit more staying power. But so we'll start there as per the motion, assuming we get a yes vote to move forward that direction. Councilmember Cargill.
I was just gonna say in response to Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate that concern. And, you know, I don't think necessarily, you know, wouldn't hurt my feelings at all if the second and third and seventh, I think is the one he said, were struck from it. I don't think it hurts to have it in there because that says the reason why we're considering this, but I also don't think it hurts to take it out either. So I think whatever the council's prerogative is on those particular paragraphs, those just give the background of why we're doing it.
Right. So if there's no more comments, we'll take the vote. And then depending on the outcome of that, we'll bring back for council's consideration if it is ordinance a first and a second read. At that point, there can be some editing and whatnot done. So if I'm not seeing any further discussion, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Those in favor of staff.
Can you repeat what the?
Get ready to.
Oh, thank you.
Those in favor of staff preparing an ordinance with regards to a prohibition of a local income tax, please say aye and raise your hand.
All right.
Aye. Hold them up so I can check them here. And those opposed.
Nay.
Nay.
All right, we have 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Kelsey, I've got those if you need them later. So motion passes. So we will work on ordinance once we get the determination from council, legal counsel, and with regards to an ordinance, and we will get that on a future agenda. Thanks, everybody. All right. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I wanted to just clarify that part of the reason that I voted no on that was mostly because I wanted to get Sean's opinion first. So on which way it should go. So just for clarity's purposes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, next workshop. Thank you Alicia and who else is here? Oh, Gary.
Gary's here. Yep.
Thanks for your patience. We have Alicia Benson and Gary Ballou from GSI to go over our workshop session number C. This is with regards to our renewal of our agreement with GSI. So you guys are on. Thanks for being patient through the rest of the meeting.
You're welcome. Good evening to all of the council members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Gary and I are going to move quickly. We want to provide, as you consider the renewal of our partnership agreement for 2022. We want to give an update on and kind of a progress update on a number of different activities. So we'll move quickly through that and then are available to answer questions. First and foremost, I want to start out by thanking all of you in the city of Liberty Lake for your partnership always and over the past year as we've been able to continue to work on some really important regional activity together. And I want to thank the mayor for her very active engagement on our board of trustees, as well as working with through our public policy issues, and then both she and Lisa's engagement on our ADO roundtable, our discussions around Advantage Spokane, the things that are critical to our partnership for the region. So thank you for that. If we go to the next slide, Gary, just want to always make sure we start with who we are and the work that we do, as we don't always be in front of you. And as an organization, we're the Regional Business Development Organization, and We wake up every day thinking about our work in 3 big buckets that result in how we continue to grow this region and our community. The first being through our greater growth, as we think about our business, how we support businesses that are here, support expansion, and the opportunity to grow our region. And Gary will jump into a lot of specifics on that in just a few minutes. Greater voice is our ability to continue to support advocacy efforts at the local, state, and federal level around important issues that support the growth of our community, support business. A lot of partners involved in that. One thing I want to note, I'll come back to that in a second, actually. And then on greater talent is the ability to really partner with the huge amount of our community and our education community to continue to make sure that we're both producing the talent that we need for the region, as well as getting those that are here connected to and into the employment opportunities, which we know is a top of mind issue for every single employer of every size and every industry across the region right now. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to pause for a second. One of the things you may or may not have had the opportunity to meet Jake yet. He is our new public policy director. He started in October. And part of our focus is wanting to make sure that we have somebody fully dedicated to the importance of advocacy across the region. Jake joined us most recently working for the Central Washington Home Builders Association. And prior to that, spent a number of years in Olympia, working both for a couple of legislators as well as with a lobbying firm there. And so has worked on a number of wide sweeping issues. One of the things, his contact information is here because our whole responsibility around advocacy is helping to be connected for all of you. Some of the issues I'm talking about tonight, being able to gather information and be that conduit. A couple of engagement opportunities that are new is that we're doing a weekly legislative call with our state lobbyists so that you can get kind of up-to-date opportunities there. And that's open to all of you to be part of. And then we also are standing up a Team Spokane platform, and the information is there, which you can just text the word greater to 52886. And what's important here is that this is a tool we're going to be building out over the course of the next year, where we're able to have action teams around priority issue areas so that we can keep folks up to date around issues that are moving locally, state, or federally around our legislative agendas. So we can go to the next slide, please, Gary. A couple of highlights on the talent front for this past year and where your partnership's been part of this. We have a regional education attainment goal, which is increasing the number of folks who have some kind of post-secondary training. And that has, we're making really significant progress as a region. And this is a key priority from our competitiveness as a region as we're competing both across the state and across the country. We were able to, with the various investments to work. One of the things that's a gap that we have in our region is a huge number of working adults who are employed but have not completed some kind of post-secondary training. And we've been working on a number of projects that look to remove the barriers that those working adults are facing and getting back into and completing some kind of credential. And so we're able to award some microgrants around that work, about $100,000 in microgrants. Then we were able to pivot a number of things to continue to create connectivity for our students and our teachers around pathways and jobs that exist in our community. We're in a partnership with the Association of Washington Business, or AWB, on a Washington Workforce Portal tool. I'd say is going to have a huge amount of for this region of the state of Washington as we look at how we're connecting the talent availability and workers, students graduating to the opportunities here in the region. And then the continuing of some of the system work that we do supporting career-connected experiences across the entire region, working with the Education Service District across the entire Eastern Washington region. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gary to talk through some of the big pieces on the economic development front.
Thank you, Alicia, and I would like to thank Council for having us here tonight. I'll go quickly as I know we're late in the hour. So we're about halfway through, actually a little over halfway through on an intensive update of our comprehensive economic development strategy. We had received at the beginning of last year a grant from the Economic Development Administration, $200,000 to do this very intensive effort. We built a steering committee with over 30 community organizations. We interviewed a number of people. We had a number of focus groups with, I think, in total 150 participants in all the focus groups. We received over 1,000 survey responses, and we tried to make sure that we were demographically and geographically diverse in those. So as we were nearing the end, we targeted some of our media at areas that we hadn't heard a lot from. So we looked at that both from a geographic distribution as well as demographic. We've done supply chain analysis, a lot of deep dives on like commercial real estate, infrastructure capabilities, data of what's going on in the world and globe. All that has gone through a SWOT analysis, and now we're starting to develop strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And now we're developing some of the strategies that we believe will carry the community forward and create economic opportunity for all. And coming up on February 11th, we'll be getting community leaders together to review some of the strategies that are coming out of that and provide more information. We're hoping to wrap the report up in June, but some of these activities that we're talking about are already underway. We reached out to over 250 local businesses last year in our business retention and expansion efforts. We did 21 business recruitment proposals. Our Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which actually covers a 10-county region, provided 368 hours of counseling for over 200 clients. And a lot of these are going after federal dollars, but it's also state procurements as well as local procurements. That led to over $210 million in awards to these local companies, including 10 from the Liberty Lake area. We've kicked off Jumpstart again. You know, we came out of COVID. So we worked with a Knowledge Network, which is a group of organizations that provide technical support to entrepreneurs. And we get them together, and then we have these Jumpstart programs to provide information to people who are thinking about starting up a business or some that have already started a business. We hosted a site visit from Project 100. We were able to secure $350,000 in strategic reserve funds to retain Carbon Quest. That's a company in Spokane Valley. We actually had a pretty big year last year of showing off the community on a national and a statewide stage. We hosted the International Economic Development Council's Future Forum. We had to go virtual this year because of COVID. So we are going to get another opportunity to host that again in a couple years. We hosted WIDA, and we had the aerospace lead from Commerce come, and so we were able to tour him around several of the facilities out in Liberty Lake and some of the other aerospace capabilities we have in our community. Direct marketing. We did sales missions in the Bay Area and in Chicago. Trade shows started again in late fall, we had discussions in those sales missions with over 20 different firms who were interested in learning about Spokane and who had an expansion or potentially a relocation opportunity. So just some specifics on Advantage Spokane, which is our shared community-wide resource for economic development. It's where we're trying to attract companies. They have information on the community. You get real estate information, you get GIS layers on the site, you get demographic data, and all that comes together, and also the value proposition for a number of our key industries that we're trying to attract as well as retain in the community. So we do a newsletter about every 2 weeks. We put out some of the great news that's coming out of the community. This shows our top states, our California and Illinois, and our top city is actually Chicago. So that's the open rate, and we track that, and we track which newsletters seem to get the better play. This is the website itself over the course of 2021. This was the number of hits. You can see a lot of them are from the state. A lot of them are actually in Spokane itself. We got a number from Seattle. We also see a lot of hits in the Bay Area, LA Basin, a little bit in Chicago, New York. Is actually a pretty big one for us as well. So up and coming for 2022, we are going to have a renewed focus on business retention and expansion. We had an opportunity for staffing And so we're having somebody who's really going to focus on getting and reaching out to businesses, but also working with what we call business support organizations. That would be groups like the Spokane Valley Chamber, INWAC, which is the Inland Northwest Aerospace Consortium, and other groups like that who have these connections with businesses. So we're trying to have that person also work with those business support organizations, and we've identified over 35 in the community. We're going to continue sharing the region story through our marketing campaign. We have 8 trade shows planned this year, 4 sales missions, and 3 direct marketing campaigns. We're doing a cross-border business analysis and talent. If you go anywhere, you're going to see a help wanted sign trying to address that talent issue. We do a lot on the talent pipeline, but also looking at some things that we can do near term to, one, bring people back into the workforce, as well as potentially attract talent to return to the area. So those are some things we're looking at. And that is the end of the presentation.
Great job, guys. Thank you so much for being here. So I guess I'll turn to the council to see if you guys have any questions or comments for Alicia and Gary while we have them. And there is an action item later asking to renew our agreement with them for 2022. Okay, Councilmember Cargill first.
Hey, Alicia, good to see you again. Hi, Gary. Alicia and GSI always have a place in my heart, and Alicia knows why. We worked together for quite some time. Alicia, I just have a quick question for you. Do you know how much the city of Spokane Valley and some of the other smaller cities, obviously city of Spokane Valley is a lot larger than us, but maybe city of Cheney and others pay for their membership?
Yeah, and actually Gary has a process of updating all of those, so I'm going to let him speak to the exact dollar amount for you. And I would just add one caveat that it's not just around your membership partner investment, it's around the economic development partnership investment and the investment in the regional tool Advantage Spokane, which I just think is important when we look at the overall partnership agreement that we have with the city of Liberty Lake and any of our other municipal partners. Gary, do you want to?
Sure. And so the membership is equal across the community. So it's the $10,500 for a level of membership, and that provides an ex officio board position. So our municipalities that are partner organizations, contractually partner organizations with GSI are all at that membership level. Then there's different amounts based on buying into the programs that GSI runs. And then once those, the way the contract is built, the additional dollars, in this case for Liberty Lake, can be used for specific items for that municipality. And so that's why in the agreement, you'll see some items that are specific to Liberty Lake regarding market analysis on some of the properties, and then some other items in there as well. So the membership is equal, but the contracts are not. We had this discussion last year. Liberty Lake, as far as population, is one of our larger participants. They're our largest participant via the size of where they are. Some are higher on a dollar basis, but their populations are much larger as well, as you pointed out, Spokane Valley.
So, so the 10,500 is the fee, no matter what city we're talking about, and then there's stuff added on top of that. Is that right?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Just
Remember done, then comes from Boyer.
Just a great thanks to Gary and Alicia, specifically for the services provided by GSI. I want to recognize that as a small city, we generally don't have what I'll call a business development budget. I believe that our investments in GSI to take a greater approach to our region, which we recognize as benefits specifically to our city, is an important investment. Thanks.
Just, thanks for the presentation. Great information.
Any other questions or comments? I usually try to speak last, but I just want to speak to My appreciation for Alicia and Gary specifically and the whole organization. I'm a pretty regular attendee at all the meetings I can get to. I'm taking advantage of some of the events as well to get to, like Mayor Pro Tem Kenny was saying, with Greater Spokane Valley Chamber, do a lot of meeting of other local business owners, especially through the business leaders meetings, and just trying to make those connections. We have lots of opportunity out here in Liberty Lake, and like to make sure everybody knows what's going on. So I appreciate the work you guys do, and looking forward to next Friday's Thrive event.
Awesome. Well, we thank you. We appreciate the partnership with the city and your engagement as we started the whole conversation. If there are ever questions, places you're looking for how you need to be connected or better plugged in, we're happy to always be part of those conversations, and glad you'll be there next Thursday. Or Friday, excuse me. It's important as we think about this next broader regional economic landscape. So thank you.
See if there's any other questions. Alicia and Gary are welcome to stay, but you probably have other things you want to do. And we do have an action item on the agenda a little bit later for the hopefully the approval of this contract.
Wonderful.
Any closing remarks?
Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. All righty. Okay, that brings us to general business.
Trailhead discussion.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about D. Sorry. Big enough. Okay, Trailhead Workshop. Councilmember Fuller, you had asked for this, so
Yes.
I want you to lead.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Council, after a couple field trips with Councilmember Kennedy out to the site, and a little bit of homework on my own, a lot of homework on my own, thinking about what's been previously said regarding the project overall. And I just wanted to, one thing that stuck in my mind after our last meeting was staff asking and our professional team, what direction does council want to give? And so as I started to think through that and started to look at the numbers, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I feel like nobody was excited about spending $3.4 million on the driving range. Because all that does is, in my mind, it takes away from the facility. Okay, fair enough. So we go back to the biggest ticket item of the overall numbers that we're considering. And I had to ask the question and pose this to the council. One, I guess, why do we even need to move the driving range? Two, yes, we would like a double decker, but I don't think it's a requirement. It's not we gotta have it. And I think that portion of the equation may be driving the height of the netting that we're looking for, or our committee is looking for, whoever's looking for. Not looking to point any fingers here, just throwing out something that may be a little more tolerable in the checkbook. So as I went on my field trip with Councilmember Kennedy, again, I'm no pole expert, but the poles up against city council seem to be roughly 50 foot tall. And they seem to be in pretty darn good shape, right where they are. Now, we all agree the net is trash. We all agree the net has to be replaced. So that's a given. But as I looked at that driving range, I thought, okay, if we don't move this driving range, we don't have to do anything with the poles on that side of the driving range, which is a considerable amount. That's the longest length of that driving range. So then as you look at the section up against the Arboretum, and you look at the section up against the course, we had from a good source, one of the guys picking up balls said the poles on the golf course side are about 21 feet tall, that we said. And the poles on the end of the course up against the Arboretum, we figured, because I brought something to measure with, are about 29 feet. 25, thank you. So as I start to think about that, I'm thinking, okay, you could physically see the balls that were outside of the netting. Do we need 50 feet all around? Maybe. Can we get away with 40? Probably. Does the net need to be replaced? Yes. Are the poles questionable? Yes. And they're not tall enough. So I go to the next step. If we're not doing the double decker, we're not going to move it, or maybe we can widen it a little bit just so we can get some more driving T spots then does it need to be as tall as the city hall side? Probably not. And everything that I'm bringing to the table here, the height of these poles directly drives the cost of that part of the project. All right, and so does the netting. All right, so I've done some homework on what it costs for poles. Surprise, right? And I've done some homework on netting just by going to some of these more popular suppliers on the internet. And I don't know that I want to share those numbers with everybody right now, because I'm just one guy at my office doing my best homework I can. So I guess what I'm looking for, and I said this before, let's take this in smaller bites. Can we have a discussion about, do we need to move the driving range first? And then second, what do we need to do to provide a driving range service as it stands today? Because we have talked about double deckers, we have talked about these low flight balls, we've talked about trajectory reports, that kind of stuff. And I go back to, is it broken? Well, it's generating money, about $150,000 a year as it sits. So for me, the disconnect is the revenue for the 3.4 versus we replace the netting, which we got to do anyways. And then we address half the holes and leave it where it is and add some T stations feedback.
Councilmember Cargill first. And then I think.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyer, for bringing this forward. I had one question, and maybe I heard this wrong, but I thought part of the reason why we had to move the golf course was to make room for the extra parking, which was required by the expansion of the building. Move the driving range, I beg your pardon, was required because we had to put that extra strip of parking in to lead out to the new outlet of the parking lot because of the building. Did I not understand that correctly?
You did, and I heard that as well. But as I'm looking at the presentation they gave us at last Tuesday, I think it was last Tuesday's meeting, and I look at where the proposed driving range is right now, it's within the current boundary of the netting and poles, and where the proposed parking is, which is between City Hall all the way up the street to where the driving T stations are. I didn't see where it was getting close to the netting, but they're the professionals, I'm not. But what I asked myself that question, why are we having such trouble with the parking scenario? And I think maybe the thing to do is to say, in my mind, and I won't speak for everybody, but it's to go back to our professional team and maybe say, can you find a way to get us the parking we need without moving the driving range? Right. I mean, they're the ones that do the math on that. They're the professionals. You know what I'm saying? So, and maybe we just got to get a little more aggressive with that portion of the pie, because it's really affecting the 3.4, the big bite that none of us were expecting, in my mind. And then I'll take it a step further, since we're talking about parking. I've thought a lot about that as well. None of the presentations has the additional parking, not what's over by the facility, but the additional parking has not been part of our numbers from the beginning. That's all extra. Fair enough. And I see value in connecting the two parking lots to City Hall, or whatever this facility may become someday. Maybe it's not a City Hall, maybe it's something else. But now, and I've heard many times, we don't have any parking here at City Hall. So if we can find a way to gain as much parking as possible as proposed, and some may roll their eyes here, but I think this funding source right there is the ARP funds to make the connection, have an ingress egress to City Hall. And then we have all kinds of options going forward with City Hall. Because it's not been part of any of our numbers to date.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Van Orman, and I'm gonna make a quick comment, and Councilmember Kurtz is after that.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Councilmember Van Orman, can I just ask a quick question? Can I share, Todd, the screen? I just want to make sure that everyone can see what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to bring it up from the last meeting again. Perfect, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Okay,
Go ahead, Councilmember Van Orman.
so as, I was
I'm
looking.
sorry. Can you go one more slide? The other way, where it shows the whole driving range?
Yeah.
That one right there. Thank you.
And as you're seeing the extra parking, I believe that we have that in our capital facilities plan to take care of by next year. So that additional parking that goes from City Hall to. So that's.
We have a dollar amount in there. I don't know, based on the conversation from the last meeting, I don't know if it's enough to cover what that may be, but there is a line item in the capital facilities plan for some additional City Hall parking. So that came up.
And the other thing too is when you're talking about the range, lane. It's already been told from our golf pro that it's longer than what's needed using those long range balls. So, or I should say the low ones. So we're okay, or at least we should be, as far as the pole.
Because I think, in my mind, I won't speak for everybody, but I feel like what's driven the height of the netting is the double decker. I think has been a part of the equation.
Part.
Not all of it, but a part of it. And I think a part of it has been some feedback from Clear Risk a couple years ago. But I thought, or I believe that we have that addressed by the different balls, that kind of thing. So I just don't see how we can go to 3.4 to move it. You can see where it is existing on that slide right there.
Okay, so we're trying to make
Yep,
a round
sorry.
robin here
Yep, sorry.
instead of making it conversational. So I will point out that the ask of the design team and everybody was to bring back that information for our meeting on the 15th with regards to options with the netting and the poles and the information from Clear Risk and things. So the team is already looking at that, and that's what we're supposed to be talking about on the 15th. Just wanted to point that out. I've got Councilmember Kurtz and then back to Councilmember Van Orman. And then.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. To Councilmember Foyer's point, I did ask about the parking and it was kind of quickly stated that it's not possible without retaining walls. And as I've driven by there a couple times, I feel like there's got to be a way with all that the landscaping piece that butts up against the right of way to do something. And if the council wants to move in a direction that doesn't move the driving range, it just seems like there's a lot of area there that could be parking. I'm not an engineer. I have no degree in any of that. But I can look at the space and see that it seems like there's a way to do that. And I'm very curious. I don't remember if we asked, I don't think we got that far in the discussion about rearranging the parking over there, but I don't know if that's one of the, sorry, I was looking at the map that Councilmember Cargill had up. I don't know if that's one of the things that can be brought back to the council is what would it cost to put in retaining? I know there's probably some engineering, and again, the dirt work was one of the things that they talked about. But I think that that's one of the things that we're going to need to be looking at if we're not wanting to spend money on the driving range because it's out of our budget. We feel like we don't want to spend that much money on that. Then what are our options and solutions, and how much do they cost regarding parking? And so I guess my question is that something that they are or can work with and bring back some information to us when we meet again?
Well, Councilmember Van Orman, if you don't mind, I got a Mayor Pro Tem first and see how to ask.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Councilmember Van Orman.
Mine isn't on necessarily the range, it's on public input. I did go ahead and check with staff. They were great enough to go ahead and look. If we were to actually just get community input as a vote, unfortunately, the first vote wouldn't be until April, and that deadline has passed. The next one would be a general, which would be, we'd have to input by August to get a November input. $5,000 is approximately what it would cost us to do that. But that would mean that this project goes to next year. So that's something to think about as we're trying to get community input as much as possible. We want to keep the dollar amount as low as possible. I think I have some ideas in there. But I'll push that over and I'll let Mike take the next one.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, it's your turn.
And I do appreciate the ability to be able to discuss this again. Yes, Councilman Pohl and I did go and look at that, and the poles are 21 feet on one side, 25 on the other. And also, if you go over to the other two golf courses we have in the city, only one of them has poles to deal with, the other goes into the water. This last weekend, I went over and spent some time at the at Post Falls, the Highlands. I just had a senior moment there, the Highlands, and I was able to visit with the golf pro there, who knows our golf pro very well, speaks highly of him, as I know all of us do. But what came up is that along Sprague, there are 9 homes that right across the street from the driving range, and they don't have low flight balls, and apparently they don't have a problem there because I was the 10th home for many years along there. We had more golf balls from hole number 5 because people slice the majority of the time. Those poles are estimated at 35 feet tall. It's my estimated, when you look at the width of the net being 25 feet, seemed to be 35 feet, doesn't seem to be a problem there. I guess one of the concerns I had from the start, when we started asking for citizen input, which I've been involved in every single meeting from citizen input, going back about 7 to 8 years, very little has come forward on what the citizens brought forward. When the city put together these in January of last year, these 3 different meetings to bring different citizens in, what they were presented was what the vision was that the company out of Colorado envisioned what we wanted to get. And the things that they asked to be brought forward for consideration, I'll be honest with you, these are not my ideas, but some of the things that they brought up is exactly what Councilman Kurtz had brought up when it came to putting retainer balls facing Safeway and also facing Chevron. And what I was a little disappointed when the Councilman Kurtz brought that up in the last meeting, and a quick response was, well, it would be costly to put in retainer walls. Well, I think it's extremely costly to put in $3.4 million, which if you look at the third option on the driving range, it's not 3.4, I believe it's about 3.8. It has a lot to do with moving the parking spaces and stuff. I feel the poles need to be replaced on the east side and also needs to be replaced on the golf course side. Also want to point out is that all of this started because of one individual coming forward, which has a right to do, and that started the investigation into the golf balls going outside of there. So what we did, we went to Clear Risk and we asked them that, hey, this is the issue, would you get back to us and what your investigation shows? And what they gave us was a report on October 4th, 2017, which the city has, and I encourage all to be given to all the council members. And on here, they identified that there was 2 distinct things that we had to address. And one of them was the golf balls going over the net, and the other had to do with the poles. So what we did, if I memory serves me correctly, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, somebody will joyful correct me, is that we then asked for a study from the projectile study. And what that showed was that yes, the balls were going over the net, and it gave us all the information we needed. So what happened, we looked at, and we made a decision to go to low flight balls. Even though the recommendation was the low flight balls would cost us revenue because people would not want to hit low flight balls. They want to hit the same size ball and weight that they play golf with. In reality, that didn't work out because my gosh, our revenues increased. So when you look at Clear Risk, there are 2 issues. We took care of their one issue immediately by the low flight balls. And they said that they would do a follow-up in 45 days. Now, I do remember that they sent us a letter and we sent a letter back to them. I do not have a copy of that. And it came to Ann Swenson, but I do remember in a meeting it was read. And I'm sure that the city has that copy. If not, we can certainly get over Clear Risk and they can supply it to us. But if I remember correctly, what it said was, okay, there was 2 issues we had. One was the golf balls, which you have addressed that. And the other one had to do with the poles. And you are addressing that. So go forward and prosper, basically. And that's what we've been doing. But think about that. Now we're into it. That's 2017, October. We're over 3 years into this. And what I'm hearing, if we need another study, I support another study on projection. But I sense that's probably to do with the extra height or something. So I'm a little concerned that we keep reinventing the wheel. Now, as a layman, Councilman Foley and I walked over, and we walked the area when you look at this overlay, where there's now the monument sign that is there and the additional parking that could be done there. We can still put that parking in based on this overlay without possibly having to move. I'm not the expert here, but as a layman, these are the questions that we bring up that I expect the professionals to do. And one of them is to look at the costs of putting retainer walls in and expand the parking area where we already have 82 sites. Now, when we look at the dollar amounts, one thing that jumped out was 94 spaces. And for that, it was like 101 point some odd million dollars. And it was for spaces plus something else. And I don't know what this something else is. But what it shows 94 spaces, we already have 82. So this, the overview that is being shown here, everyone I've looked at, now unless I'm missing something here, and I certainly hope that somebody will set me straight, we're not getting rid of the 82 spaces we've got. We're simply putting the additional on. One, I would expect as a citizen and a council member to look at the cost of retainer walls and also how much more spaces can we get? Because in scenario one, if we're looking at having 94 spaces and we're looking at 12 more, if we can do that in the footprint that we have, look at the millions of dollars we're saving. I am not a proponent of moving that driving range in any way, shape, or form. Now, when Councilman Foley and I went over there and looked at this, the poles are very narrow on one side. Any golf balls, the low flight that are now appearing in the grass area down there is only because some of the netting is about 3 to 4 inches high. The netting is a disaster there. We have to replace that. And some of them are rolling over. On the east side, excuse me, the south side, because the height is only 21 feet, the golf balls are going over and hitting the grassy area. But keep in mind, there's no golfers who are hitting and there's no homes. Putting in poles of 50 feet all the way around probably would take care of that. Now, so that's what I would like to see. But also I understand what's come up in discussion before is that we had to go with get rid of the wooden poles because of the height issue. Therefore, we had to go to steel. And I distinctly remember a comment being said, well, we can't go any higher than we are right now with the wooden poles. So Phil and I were talking about this, and just for the heck of it, I Googled before the meeting tonight, and I asked a simple question. Of the wooden poles that are supplied by the electrical companies, what is the height? And what they say when residential is 30 to 60 feet. Along highways, it's anywhere between 60 to 120 feet tall, wooden poles. So what I have to look at, forget about the metal poles right now. Look at what we have. If the 50 feet is adequate on one side, then I think the 50 feet is adequate on the east side. Or excuse me, the east side, and I think it's adequate on the south side. If we were to do that, that is only 30 additional poles to be replaced. But as Councilman Phil and I were looking at this earlier, that it has been talked about, it would be great if we could make it wider, because if we make it wider, then we can have additional spaces for people hitting golf balls, which give us gross revenue right off the bat. It could be moved out 30 feet south, not affect anything because we're going to have to replace the poles. There's no added expense in going out 30 feet. The only added expense is the 30-foot wide webbing, 50 feet tall. So moving forward, I think that all of us want to use common sense. Let's go back to common sense that keep the driving range right where it's at. That's what I would like to move forward on. Don't keep telling me all these variables if we were to move it. Let's look at what we've got and how we can move forward. Because if whatever millions we're going to spend on this, what we're going to be making in payments far exceeds whatever revenue we would make. So let's be conscientious of the citizens. Now, allow me to finish on the citizens. I think it's important we continue to get input from the citizens, but I think it's too late. And why? Because we've held citizen retreats for years. And the challenge is, if this council, if we don't know where we're going today, how can we give direction to the citizens to give us input back? They will be as confused as we are. I'm excited about finally getting something done. Let's don't stub our toe on going back and recreating, spending money where we've already spent. Thank you.
Councilmember Baird.
Thank you, Mayor. I would support pretty much everything that has already been stated by my fellow council members, especially within regards to knowing that if 40% of the budget is dedicated to polls and the driving range, let's revisit that. In terms of citizen engagement, I definitely echo part of what Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy was saying, that, citizens can weigh in at any time. I think, personally speaking, my issue of moving forward without citizen input comes down to only if we're increasing the budget. That's where I think that additional citizen feedback would be crucial. To your point, we've had multiple opportunities for citizens to weigh in throughout the 7 years, that the Trailhead's been discussed. So I appreciate the call toward common sense, especially with the budget. And just from hearing my fellow council members, what I'm hearing is, many of you are not in favor currently of, seeing this budget increase. And again, I'm not saying that applies to everyone, it just seems to be pieces I'm picking up on, folks. So I would just go back to the comments I've made at previous meetings, that if the council so wills to increase the budget, at that point, we do need to make a conscientious effort to gain additional citizen feedback.
Thank you. Any other comments? I guess go ahead, Councilmember McCarthy.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say to Councilmember Kennedy's point, if this east side is 50 feet right now, again, what was recommended was to go to 150 feet. And I just don't know how the citizens who live in that area are going to be okay with 150-foot tall poles blocking any view that they might have. I concur, and I appreciate what Councilmember Van Orman said about community input and checking on a ballot measure. Again, my position hasn't changed from the last meeting, and I think even if it costs us $5,000, I think we would be well served by getting that community buy-in. But it has to be something specific. It has to be, here's the project, here's what we're going for, here's all the costs and how we're going to do it. What do you think? I don't think we can just go and say, hey, do you want to renovate this, and not giving them any background. So I still believe the best way to do that is a public vote, although I know that not everyone agrees with that. Thank you.
Great. Just unless I know Councilmember Dunn hasn't had a chance to comment, just before I jump in, Councilmember Dunn, have anything?
I reflect on the utility of the driving range. Based on our prior discussion, it's one of the biggest, I'd say, draws of actions and interactions. I value the notion, the discussion of the low flight balls and their choice. It hasn't had a significant deterring effect on the growth of the use of the course. So I'm not opposed to continuing to use the low flight balls. And I'll just say, and what that may become based on what the architects would suggest. So regarding the positions of the existing golf course, if this is a significant ability to reduce the total impact cost of the project, potentially retain the current position, modifications is needed. So I bear witness the same, that the cost of that driving range as a piece of this project just seems to be a significant portion. And if there's some really good ways, Lisa, that team is working on for next week to get a look at, I look forward to that. Thanks.
basically what I've heard over the last couple of weeks of discussions is fairly high support for the building concept of 3, but how do we get the entire budget back down to closer to where we were to start? And that's really, based on the direction you guys gave to the design team and everything last week. And Lisa can confirm, I see her on here. That's really, the information we're discussing tonight is, still part of what they're working on, so we can have that discussion on the 15th. Is that a good summary, Lisa?
That is a good summary, and I'd remind everyone that the information, if you will recall at the last meeting, we didn't have complete information on the driving range. We had very, very crude estimates because we were waiting on the information from Tanner. But we heard what you said, and we are looking at opportunities to reduce that cost and to really skinny that up, and we'll have some different ideas. We don't have the data yet at this point. We actually have somebody coming in to evaluate the polls. There was some speculation that all the cost, or a significant part of the cost, was associated with having poles that would allow for a double decker. That's not actually true. The double decker only added 14 feet to the height of the poles. But again, we're hearing what you're saying, and we'll be able to present more information to you on the 15th. And you can give us direction from there.
Thanks, Lisa. Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember Leonora.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that update. I do appreciate that. I do have to go back to our meeting of January 18th when this was presented to us, to the council. And that was really the first time evening we got to look at that. And the bottom line is what was presented there is because the schedule was put across and it's so critical to us that we needed to make a financial decision on how we're moving forward. And the end of that meeting, I believe, was probably the first time we saw that the 8.4, it had been discussed, but probably the first time we saw it wasn't 8.4, it was probably 10, and it probably was going to be up to $12 million. So we asked for additional information, and 1 week later, January 25th, we were given this information, but we were not given this information until the next day, Wednesday. It was presented to us at that meeting, along with additional financial information, what it would cost for some of these items, such as virtual golf, what it would cost to put that in. It was estimated to be $50,000 in revenue. I think that was all very important information that needs to be supplied. But also in that last Tuesday's meeting, it was implied we need to really make a decision on budget, because if not, it keeps getting kicked down the road and we're going to lose the opportunity. I don't want to be put in that position. Now, allow me to go back, if I may, which comes to citizen comment. The company that we spent $80,000 or an excessive amount of money for that on the first part of January 2020, January 6th, January 7th, and January 8th, gave this information to the citizens. I was able to locate the notes from every one of those meetings I went to, and here was the 5 main things that was brought up that was determined need to be looked into. And I find this very revealing. One of them was look at other courses. How are they set up for restaurant, food? How do they set up their driving range and their cart storage is set up? Haven't done that, I'm not sure. Second thing was thrown out, and not necessarily in this order, availability of taller wood poles came up then because the suggestion was made, we may not be able to get high enough poles. So these were citizens brought these up. This was not Mike Kennedy. These were citizens bringing this up. Another one was, which really jumps up, which goes to Councilman Kurtz, and I appreciate Councilman Kurtz bringing this up, was a retainer wall on the Safeway side and the Chevron side. That's a couple of years old, has been brought up, and it's been brought up numerous times. And the only research I heard was this last time was, well, it's going to cost a lot of money for a retainer wall. Give me the figures so I can make a decision on how many parking spaces we can get. The other thing was a recommendation that the chipping and putting where it was located was to be considered. And why I remember this, because when it was brought up, I thought, no, that's not a good idea. It shows I wasn't thinking clear. The idea was to take the chipping and putting, moving it to the south side of the driving range which still has easy access to the restaurant and the golf course, and take that additional space for them and put it into parking, which could be utilized at City Hall. Totally missed that. And the other thing that came up, which is most revealing, was move the cart storage. That was an issue because the issue was, why are we giving up square footage for cart storage? When it could, every other golf course puts it far away. So I only wanted to bring up what the citizen comments were, not Mike Kennedy, what the citizen comments were. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we had Councilmember Van Norman next.
Hey, you got Brett this time.
All you council members down there.
I think what I wanted to kind of zone in was the fact that being in the construction industry, we know that a 2x4, went from $2 to $4 and is now $8. We know that the climate, it's not going to get less expensive, it's just getting more. So we either figure out how we're going to do this by the end of February, first part of March, or trucks going to sell without us because they're not going to be able to get craftsmen and so forth lined up. And we already know also that this is a prevailing wage job. So those craftsmen are going to be making $60+ an hour, so one way or the other as a city, we have to narrow this down to where we can, like Phil has said, take them in small bites, makes a huge difference. So looking at our last actual budget, we've got to commend the city of Liberty Lake. I mean, one, we received far more than what we had budgeted for. And they spent far less than what they had budgeted for. So we have money to go ahead and put towards this project. I would suggest that we don't delay, we're going to go forward.
Agreed.
Great, thank you. Are there any more comments? Go ahead, Councilmember Dunn. You're on mute, Dan.
Sure. What resonates with me was Councilmember Van Orman's observation of timing. With respect to what we've been granted as a design build program, timing is the essence. So I respect that highly and want to drive. Thanks.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz.
I just wanted to say thank you to Lisa for your patience and listening to us and taking in everything that we are putting forward. I think everybody's trying to come up with a good solution and a good idea. And again, we aren't the experts, but I think we're really open to the ideas and the solutions that the experts can provide us. So thank you again for listening and trying to keep us on track with the time frame.
Councilmember Collier, go ahead.
I was debating whether to share my numbers. I'm not going to, just to see how close I am, but I should have taken bets later on. I mean, over everything.
Gotcha. Okay, seeing no more comments, we can move on to general business consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda, motion to approve January 18th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Item 2, approve the January 25th, 2022 special City Council meeting minutes. And item 3, motion to approve the December 31st, 2021 vouchers and February 1st, 2022 vouchers in the amount of $288,523.33.
Second. Second by Councilmember Baird. And I will reflect, Councilmember Cargill has stepped out, so this vote will be out of 6. So all in favor of approving the consent agenda as read, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, ayes have it 6-0. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor. Action items. Motion item 1, authorize the purchase of a club car carryall 500 in the amount of $12,466.92.
Second. Second by Councilmember Baird. All right, any discussion or questions on action item A, for the club car? Okay, not seeing or hearing any, all in favor of approving action item 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Action item 2, motion to approve the Greater Spokane Incorporated Annual Economic Development Partnership Agreement in the amount of $26,000 and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
We have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Collier. Any discussion or questions? Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of the reason why I asked the question of Alicia earlier about what the cost is versus what we pay, what other cities pay as well. It's because I wanted to get an idea of the burden that's on our citizens versus the burden that's on other citizens in other communities. And so I was glad to hear that it wasn't the full 26, that it was only 10,500, but that, still a good chunk of it that is applied to all cities, no matter how large or small they are. That concerns me a little bit because I'm not saying that we don't get what we put into GSI. I just want to make clear that the burden for Liberty Lake citizens is a lot higher than the burden for Spokane Valley citizens and other citizens as well. So I just want to make sure our citizens know that. And that's part of the reason why I have a little bit of hesitation about this. Thank you.
Yeah, just, Mayor Pro Tem before I speak. Go ahead.
I would like to give credit back to Councilman Kurtz that last year when this came up at that time, that she brought this up and really got me thinking about that we did start questioning that, and it was true. There was a flat amount, but it looked like that proportionally for the size we were paying a lot more. So I appreciate you taking the effort to let the citizens know that we are paying a higher amount. And as we can move forward, we'll probably keep that in mind.
Any other comments? I will just reflect, and I remember those conversations coming up in the past, and especially when it came to the Advantage Spokane site, and the discussion kind of reflected around, well, the site's being built, and it's going to take the same effort for your city as does your city, does depend no matter what the size. And so that's kind of how I try to work this. Obviously, at the 10,000 plus per capita is higher, but the work effort from GSI since they're doing it region wide, it doesn't differ depending on the size. So that's just from previous discussions on it. So any other questions or comments on this item before we go to vote? All right, all in favor of approving action item 2, Greater Spokane Incorporated agreement, please say aye.
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 We have any opposed? Okay, we have 6 in favor, 1 opposed, and I'll get that to you, Kelsey, later.
I'm sorry, could I ask who was a pro?
Oh yeah, Councilman McCargo.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't
You were
looking
washing
up.
hands.
No, I wasn't getting it. I was trying to read what's coming next.
Okay.
Thank you. Motion item 3, approve the 2022 small works contract with Bacon Concrete for miscellaneous concrete, flat work and curbing, an amount not to exceed $50,000, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract.
Need a second?
Second.
Councilmember Foyer is a second. Any questions or do you want anybody to go through this? Councilmember Foyer.
I just have one question. And I guess for me, when I refer to my question, I go to the page. So the document, the PDF document is 102 pages long. I'm on page 66 for anybody that wants to follow along. And it's a simple question. At the very bottom of the pricing, there's a load charge of $8,000. Help me understand the purpose of that. Is that for the year? Is that's certainly not per trip?
Lisa, Jen, whose item? I can't remember whose this is.
Phil did that for us. I would have to check in with Phil and get back to you on that. I don't have an answer for that. You said it's page 66.
66 of 102, yes. There's bid items 1 through 10. The last one is mobilization for $8,000. All the others look like they're a lineal foot and square foot price. So I'm assuming that's for the year, but I just thought I'd ask a question.
Yeah,
It's not to
I
exceed
wouldn't.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can follow up on that.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, not seeing or hearing any, all in favor? I'm sorry, you need to raise it higher. I keep,
Yeah.
I have my glasses on, I can't see very well.
The only comment I would make is thank you for doing this. A few years back, I went ahead and fell and basically fractured my wrist, all because of raised sidewalks. So very, very important.
Yep.
Thank you for doing that.
The team's been working really well on getting some of those repaired, and this is just another step in the right direction. Okay, all in favor of action item 3, approval of the small works contract with Bacon Concrete, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not hearing any, motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Action item 4, motion to confirm the mayor's appointments of Joe Mann, DG Garcia, Dr. Dale Robbins, and Jim Bomker to the Planning Commission.
Second. Get a second from Councilmember Kurtz. Any questions, comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Comments on these 4 individuals. I'm extremely excited and comfortable to see that the 4 individuals that came forward, several of these individuals have a long history of being involved with the city. Also, DG Garcia, who was a council member for a period of time, very experienced. Jim Bonker has, over the years, has applied for the position a couple different times. Didn't get the nod, but Jim, thank you for coming back. Thank you for being involved in the salary commission. Same with Joe Mann and Dr. Dale Robbins. I thought your interview was very, very good, and I'm really pleased to see you come forward. Thank you for all of your commitment.
Councilmember Fuller.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I just have one question. As I was looking over the applications, Joe Mann is currently on the plan.
Yeah, his term ran out.
So do we have to, just because the term runs out, do we have to reappoint? Okay,
Yes. Yep, re-interview and reappoint.
okay.
And as you know, we've started to put in place, we had staff members, so Lisa was there, obviously, and we also had the chairman of the planning commission as part of the interview panel. We'll continue to do that with the commissions. So we had it was really great to hear Richard Seiler, the chairman of the planning commission's input with regard in the interview. So it was a great process. And just a note, and I'm sure you'll probably chime in with the same Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy. I'd sent a note out to the council, but just for the public's information, I know that Jim Bonker put my name down, I believe yours too, as a reference on his application. I didn't know he was applying, so did not have any bearing whatsoever on our decision. It was unanimous between the 3 of us doing the interview to appoint him. So I just want to make sure we get that on record. All right, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll take the vote. All in favor of confirming the 4 appointments as noted, please say aye.
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 Do you have any opposed? All right, ayes have it. Motion passes 7-0.
Action item number 5, motion to authorize the mayor execute the Avista lighting agreement for Kramer Parkway in the amount of $4,806 annually.
Second by Councilmember Baird. Any questions, comments? Not seeing or hearing any, all in favor of approving the Avista lighting agreement as printed, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Action item number 6, motion to authorize the mayor to approve purchase of 2 police vehicles off the state contract in the amount of $69,547.97, and authorize the mayor to approve the quote from Raycom to outfit both vehicles in the amount of $28,400.86.
Second from Councilmember Baird. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Fuller.
For anybody that cares to follow me along, I'm on page 92 of 102.
Chief's on in case you have a question.
Mine's a very simple question. I think I asked it the last time. My question is regards to sales tax. Why are we not paying our local sales tax at the point of receiving the product instead of at the point of purchase?
That's how all vehicles are.
Is it? And I know I asked this last year, but I don't remember the answer. It's just because we buy them from the area. Well, how is that any different when I go to Dave Smith to buy a vehicle, but I still have to pay sales tax here?
Yeah. We bought our last 2 cars in Idaho, we had to pay,
No, I understand, but this is 10.1. Our rate's 8.9.
no, there's an addition adder for Liberty Lake. Chief, I don't know, or Kyle even,
That may be a Kyle question, and I know there's been a discrepancy in the taxes paid on our equipment, and it depends on where we pick it up. If we pick it up, if it's delivered, if we pick it up within the city of Spokane, and we pick it up outside the city of Spokane, so or we're getting it delivered from outside the city of Spokane. So that may be a Kyle question. Better suited again for.
I can weigh in on
Yeah,
that.
chief, that's ringing the bell now, because
Green line sales tax.
yeah, that's ringing the bell now, because I think it was cheaper to go get it than it was to have to deliver it. Thank you.
Councilmember Cargill, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. Chief, maybe you can answer this question for me. So am I understanding this correctly, that the vehicles are coming from Everett?
Yes.
And so.
Yes. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so the outfit in which we purchased the vehicles from on the state bid is located in Everett.
And then, and there's, I just want to throw out the idea, I mean, we have a lot of car dealerships right here in Liberty Lake. There's no way we can, and obviously I understand the lowest prices is ideal, but there's no way we can purchase anything from the car dealerships we have here.
I mean, we could, but from a budget standpoint, saving money and that money rolling downhill, it's more beneficial for us to purchase our vehicles on the state bid.
And can I add on to that? Since we buy quite a bit of equipment off the state contract versus locally, oftentimes, if we purchase off the state contract, it's already been out for competitive bid through the state, through the Department of Enterprise Services. If we purchase locally from a vendor or contractor that's not on the Washington State purchasing contract, then we have to go through the competitive bid process ourselves. So it streamlines the purchasing process for staff.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And for us, Councilmember Cargill, there are some other advantages for us for purchasing off the state bid. We do have the option, depending on what type of vehicle we're purchasing, to get that vehicle either completely outfitted or partially outfitted. So there's some things that we can do on the state bid that we can't do purchasing from local dealers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A citizen brought this to my attention, which I appreciate because I know the citizen well enough that if I didn't say something about this, he would haunt me down. So the question, I think it's a typo. What is referred to under the enterprise services, it says a 2021 Dodge Charger. But I also realized that under the Raycom, under notes, it says 2022. So we are buying 2022, I would assume.
No, these are 2021s that are actually held. They only had a couple left on the lot. Otherwise, we'd have to have those built, and those are about 6 to 8 months out. And also, in addition to that, the 2021s were a little bit cheaper. And finally, the 2022 or the bids for 2022 vehicles isn't open yet. And we don't know when those are going to be open from the state yet. So that may be just a typo. There may be a typo on Raycom's part.
Great. Can you give us an approximate what type of a savings we probably had over 2022?
I couldn't tell you that because the 2022 bids aren't up, and they don't have 2022 vehicles available yet on the state bid.
I asked the wrong question. Thank you. Can you give me some idea, just a ballpark, what we probably save per vehicle of buying a 2021? Because you said that
I can't tell you that because there's no 2022s on the state bid yet. So they don't have those available. So there's no price there. So there's no, I'm not going to guesstimate on that.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to correct myself, but I think I asked the wrong question. Did I misunderstand you when you said that these are 2021s because they were sitting there that we're getting a discount on them? Did I hear that correctly?
those are, I don't know about a discount, but those are the vehicles that they have available right now on the state bid. There are no 2022 vehicles available on the state bid right now for special purpose vehicles for law enforcement. And I have no idea when they're going to put those up. I know there were some issues with COVID and purchasing last year. That's one of the reasons why it took 6 to 8 months for us to get the 2 that we ordered last year. We were just excited that they had 2 available and holding those for us right now, waiting on this city council meeting so we can either purchase those or tell them to move on to another bidder.
Thank you for that answer, because as always, if the citizen asks a question, as far as I'm concerned, that's a priority. So thank you, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Chief and I exchanged a couple texts on this today because my son was giving him a hard time for chargers. Chief, if you could just kind of give a quick synopsis of what you told me with regards to maintenance costs on these versus what you guys were spending on the Explorers plus the savings of going from the Explorer to the Charger.
Of course. So when we looked at purchasing vehicle last year, we wanted to make a really good evidence-based decision on the type of vehicles that we were ordering. And so we reached out to the Idaho State Patrol, Washington State Patrol, and also Post Falls, and we actually sat down with the city of Post Falls to look at some alternative vehicles other than the Fords. And what we came up with, in the words of the former chief of police for the city of Post Falls, I will never buy another Ford. So he purchased 9 Dodges last year. And also, in addition, we actually sat down and talked to Raycom, who outfits a lot of agencies' vehicles from around this region, not just the Spokane County. And there were a lot of advantages to purchasing the Dodges. First thing, if this would have been on the agenda for 2 Fords, it would have been about $117,000 to purchase those and fully equip those. That savings rolls downhill when you start talking about computer docks, firearms to place in those computers, etc. And we also checked as far as the maintenance on those, and there's really not a discrepancy on the maintenance on those. Honestly, they're all police vehicles. We drive them like police vehicles. So at some point, there's something that's going to go wrong with them. And so one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that we're spending our money in the best way, the best manner, and we're getting the best bang for our buck. And also those vehicles are suited for patrol, and our officers also feel comfortable in those. Now, I can tell you that I've had several officers who were not very high on those vehicles at first, and many of those are requesting a Dodge right now after seeing the ones that we purchased and test driving those. So I think it's a really good vehicle for us, especially for city driving. We don't have to do a lot of off-road driving, mountain driving, those types of things. So for us, I think it's just a really good purchase for us, especially when you start talking about the cost savings as well as the savings associated with equipping those.
And we appreciate your due diligence, Chief. I know for many, many years, it was a directive to go with Ford, and I appreciate you reaching out and getting that feedback from our neighboring agencies. So again, great job. Thank you. All right, so we have motion in a second. Do we have any other questions? All right, those in favor of approving the purchase of 2 police vehicles and the outfitting thereof, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, ayes have it, 7-0, motion passes.
Mayor?
Yes.
We are about 7 minutes to 10, so I don't know if we need to.
Does somebody want to make a motion to extend the meeting by 15 minutes?
Move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes to 10:15.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Dunn, second by Councilmember Baird. So we all in favor of extending the meeting to 10:15, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I was going to hit that too. I was thinking of pointing that out. So we are extended to 10:15. Thanks, everybody.
Very good, thank you. Motion to approve action item 7, authorize the mayor to approve the 5-year contract renewal with Axon Enterprises, Inc. for body cameras and purchase the first year in an amount of $24,927.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. So we have a second by Councilmember Baird. Any questions for the chief on this item? Councilmember Baird.
This isn't a question, it's more of a statement. I really appreciate the commitment to public safety and transparency with the body camera purchase, and I appreciate you moving forward. Thank you.
We are, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I think Liberty Lake was one of the first or the first city in Washington State to have a body cameras, correct?
I know I believe we were the first ones in Spokane County and one of the first in the state. Yes.
Right, I love our town making, a little town making inroads, so.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, not seeing any questions. All in favor of approving the Axon contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, ayes have it, 7-0.
Thank you, Mayor. The last item would be item 8, revisit 2022 Pro Shop Supplies and Merchandise Purchasing Authority for resale from January 18th meeting.
So I guess the question, what is the action on that?
Well, it's going to be a discussion if we have to have. It has to be, I believe the attorney can correct me here. Would this be a motion and a second, then we get into the discussion? I'm just looking for clarification.
Sean?
Sorry, my computer issues.
That's okay.
Standpoint of action, I mean, is it just to, I think from before was the authority as far as the resale, if it's just revisiting and to move forward with subsequently the approval that I think became before the council, then yes. I mean, I guess I'm not clear specifically myself on what the action item is. You can certainly have a discussion. And if the council wants to move forward with a motion to approve something, you can certainly do that.
Right. Okay, very good. Yeah, I was just asking for clarification if it needs a motion or not. So what I'm hearing, it does not. Very good. Yes, I brought this up, and first of all, I want to say is that the way our system is set up, that any council member on the, what did you call it? The, not the winning side?
On the prevailing
Prevailing side. On anything has the choice of bringing something back up if some council members approach them or approach somebody to bring this back up. That was the situation. For consideration. So I just want to point out that is how this operates, because I did have one council member call me and I think was somewhat confused, is that why would we do something like this? We've already revisited this. Well, that's part of the process and procedure that RCWs have. So I wanted to explain that on it. I feel at the time that when this was discussed, we didn't have that, I don't want to say improper information, not adequate information, but maybe just didn't understand totally what the process was. Kyle is on the phone here. We've had this conversation. You've had conversations with Chris. Is Chris on the phone tonight?
Chris is not, but I can certainly speak to anything that he would wanna.
So yeah. So what I wanted to say is that what this was, and Kyle, because you and I talked about this, and also Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to make sure that I do this properly.
Yeah.
Well, the way we have it now for the system is our employees, coworkers can obligate up to $1,000. And even with that, there's supervision from their above that. Beyond that goes to $5,000. In this case, it goes to the administrator, that if the individual is going to buy something over that, it goes with $5,000, over that has to come to the council. One of the concerns that, if I understand this correctly, came from our golf pro, is that because of the shortages, dealing with clubs and things of this sort here on it, he will be in a position that he wants to order something and the dollar amount is not the most critical, I think we're talking about here. The challenge that he can talk to a supplier, they will say, yes, I have that, it's X number of dollars, I can tie it up for you today. The process has been that the individual employee, coworker cannot tie that up, has to go through the process, fill out the paperwork, get approved and move forward. So therefore, in the last time, my recommendation was to make a motion to advance it up to $5,000. Because if you look at the supporting documentation that was supplied to us out of a year, out of all these purchases, if you look at the dates, there was 3 specific dates where it was over that dollar amount. It wasn't on a daily situation. My feeling was, as a convenience, if we raise it to 5,000, what the individual would be able to do is tie up that inventory, fill out the paperwork, a day or two, go to the administrator, our administrator who authorizes up to 5,000, and we can move forward and he ties up the product. My concern is that if I understand this correctly, now we've changed that to $20,000. I'm not comfortable with that. The reason why RCWs and the city has done the 1,000 and the 5,000 is not only in addition to the inventory control, but it's also, it allows our employees not to get themselves between the rock and the hard place. To order something or buy something that might come back to say you didn't have authority. And if that's the case, not shame on them, shame on us. The other thing I was concerned about is I felt this was setting a precedent. If it happens to be $20,000, then we've also set a precedent for Jen, who I think that would certainly come forward, that if we buy 50,000 pounds of de-ice and I make this decision today, then I'm going to save 25 cents a pound, and look at the savings that is there. So why wouldn't Jen in her capacity come back to say, well, you set the precedent by allowing the golf to do that, then I think you ought to raise that dollar amount. That's my concern. So that's why I wanted to bring it back up for reconsideration, to think about exactly what the process is, why we have the process. And once again, I'm going to repeat myself. It was my understanding that why we wanted to do this is because of inventory control and be able to tie up the inventory with the supplier. Whereas in the past, it might be 3 to 4 or 5 days before they get back to them. And the supplier says, I'm sorry, all of that inventory is gone. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Edelman and Councilmember Baird.
First, I'd like to thank Councilmember Kennedy for voting the way you did, because as soon as you did, I knew exactly why, for Robert's Rules of Order. But the other is making sure that we've got checks and balances still left in place. Most of you weren't here when I was mayor from 2008 to 2011, and we went through some pretty turbulent times. And when you got 19 to 22% below what you were currently bringing in, as far as property taxes, they were really low coming in, and they only come in twice a year. At that time, it was May and November. Now that's changed a little bit to where it's coming in monthly as well. You need to be able to, when you're doing the books, know exactly what's coming in. And if you've got a $20,000 slim, it's a little difficult to recover from. So my thank you is for bringing us back up. And I know that we can take care of some of these issues that Chris was looking at. But I really think that we need to, because of our financial policies and the checks and balances, we'll leave them the way they were.
Councilmember Baird.
Thank you, Mayor. So Kyle, I guess this question would be directed towards you. If we don't raise the cap to $20,000, what is the consequence to the pro shop?
So there isn't a major consequence. Let's get that out. Like, there isn't this major, pitfall that they're going to fall into and we're going to lack sales. The rationale behind giving that, broad authority was that, we're going to turn the 60 into, so what the full amount for pro shop merchandise for resale was $60,000. That turns into $100,000. So that's immediately resold, and that's a revenue stream for the city. So the rationale was, if he had broad authority to purchase these things a second the customer is asking for it, we can be more responsive as a normal business operates, because we obviously have a lot more restrictive policies in place than your average business, and that is 100% necessary. And so yeah, the rationale was to open it up a little bit, to treat it more like a business, to be more responsive to these customers that are asking for these custom orders that are sometimes a hassle, especially lately, to get these suppliers locked down and getting this equipment actually shipped. And so that was the biggest challenge, and I don't want to overstate this. This is not a major issue, and certainly, reflecting on this, jeopardizing isn't the right word, but you know, I guess sidestepping the financial policies isn't probably the best way to go, because to Councilmember Kennedy's point, you know, Jen's crew over operations and maintenance and the PD and planning, they have just as a legitimate of a claim to say, why can't we go acquire these pieces of equipment, because we're having the same problem. And so I do not want to jeopardize any sort of or call into question that, you know, we're granting favoritism to any sort of department over another. So I 100% understand that position.
So I think that kind of leads me to my thought process on that. One of the key differences between the golf pro shop and, you know, not, since the example was named Jen's department, is one's business. One's, granted it's a city run business, but so it's an enterprise. And then the other one is a department of the city. So I kind of look at this from, you know, Councilmember Van Orman's perspective. You know, we don't want to just willy-nilly change financial policies. That sets bad precedent and could land us in trouble right down the road should the economy take a downturn. But on the other hand, I have to weigh that operating a business, you need flexibility. So on one hand, I'm trying to weigh, you know, financial responsibility and adherence to policy, and on the other hand, flexibility to run a business. So if I'm correct in your estimation, Kyle, what I'm hearing is, if we keep it the way it is, we're meeting the policies, right? We're not setting a bad precedent, but we are hamstringing the business side of it to a degree. Is that an accurate summation?
Yes, to a small degree. And then there's also, you know, a lesser important topic of, you know, the somewhat tedious nature of getting these purchase orders approved, getting the documentation rounded up and getting that in front of Jen, and if it's over 5,000, getting in front of city council and having to wait until the next meeting. Those are rare. So I shouldn't overstate that, but yes.
Thank you.
Okay, got Councilmember Kurtz.
Just to clarify, the current state, because we voted on this at one of the last meetings we had, is that the pro shop does have the exception. Is that correct for today?
That is correct for today, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear because we did vote for that. So I guess is the ask to go to something different, because I'm hearing what Councilmember Van Orman is saying about having some consistency, also having the same thoughts as Councilmember Baird about having some flexibility. And I guess my broader question is this a bigger discussion that we need to have about what the dollar amount is for all of our departments? And so I would like to maybe consider us putting that on as a workshop. So we can maybe weigh the pros and cons versus making a decision tonight that is like at the end of our meeting and maybe we have more questions about. So that would be my my proposal would be to look at adding this on as a workshop versus maybe making a decision tonight, so we can take a broader look at all the parts and pieces of it.
And I do have on my agenda for February to start that process of revisiting the financial policies and obviously getting that out to council for input.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm more than willing to wait till the end.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was one of the four that voted for this, and I guess I overlooked the whole setting a precedence theory, the $1,000, $5,000 policy. So before our action at our last meeting, Kyle, the dollar amount maximum for the golf pro was 1,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was $1,000 for him to go out on his own to acquire, you know, equipment. Anything over 1,000 either requires that, you know, you have a sole source manufacturer or you have 3 separate bids to take the lowest responsive bid. And so with supplies, and especially with golf supplies, you have a sole source almost all the time because you have you have a tailor-made supplier, you have a Titleist supplier, and so you go straight to that source to get that equipment. But yeah, so sorry, that was a long way to answer your question. Yes.
So if this body decided to go adjust that, well, we've already adjusted it to 20,000, but if we decide to adjust it back to 5,000 per our policy with every other department, what impact does that have on his operations? And two, before you answer that, your comment about him having the ability to order product for customers, I would expect he takes some sort of deposit, half if not in full, when he makes the order. Is that fair?
So I would have to, I'll have to consult him on exactly how that works. My understanding would be is that we collect the order from, or we collect the funds from the customer and then pay the supplier after.
On the spot. So then when we go back to my other question, then how impactful will the 5,000 per our policy be to his operation?
So there's a couple different ways to answer that. So right now, so if let's say we scale it back to the 5,000, that would have a very, very minimal impact. And so what then we talk about is what sort of paperwork do we want to require then? And so if we want to require the purchase order still, and the purchase order, just to refresh, is purchases between $1,000 and $4,999. And that makes up the vast majority of his purchases. And that does take a lot of document gathering and staff time to approve. But to that point, that shouldn't be a reason to shy away from it. So I'm rambling, but does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Real quick, before we go to Councilmember Kurtz, we've got less than 5 minutes left. We have a motion to extend again.
I make a motion to extend to 10:30.
Second. Second by Councilmember Dunn. All in favor of extending the meeting to 10:30, please say aye.
Aye.
Do you have any opposed? All right, we're extended to 10:30, 7-0. Okay, Councilmember Kurtz, you're next, and we have Mayor Pro Tem.
I make a motion that we table this topic until a future meeting.
We have a second.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Baird.
Can I ask for clarification? So does this mean then the policy that we approved in the last meeting stands until we revisit this at whatever meeting? Is that, I'm understanding that correctly? Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to table this to a future meeting. Any discussion or questions? Councilmember Kurtz.
I would like it to be, if it's timely, I mean, I think at the next meeting, I understand we haven't gone over the workshop. There's a long list, so we'll have to fit that in. I don't want to delay on the decision, but I also would like the Golf Pro here to be able to ask some of these questions of, and I do think it fits into the broader discussion of just the general financial policies, which Kyle said he's working on. And then I feel like with the understanding that the Golf Pro actually takes it, he ingests the money before doing this. I don't see in the next 2 weeks a real liability for the city. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel comfortable leaving it as is until we can gather more information and have a more robust discussion.
Just real quick, so we've got the motion on the table. Are you making a motion to make an amendment to table to the 15th instead of, because there was no date?
Sure. Yes, I will make a motion to amend my motion to table it until the 15th.
Second.
And so from Councilmember Dunn. So we're now voting on the amendment, which adds the phrase until the 15th. So it's going, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. The only thing I wanted to add is this: we are now going in our 20th year of this, having that golf. It's not been a problem. It's not a problem, folks. Not a problem. It's not a problem. Let's be careful not to create a problem and create a precedent. I am totally on board with workshops and discussions. If any council member brings something up, that's a right of every one of ours. So I have no challenge with that. But let's don't create a problem where we don't have. It's worked for 20 years.
Any other comments on the table on the amendment to add to the 15th?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Foyer.
Thank you. I'm not too proud, pardon me?
Okay, just remember, this is discussion on adding those words
Huh?
to the 15th.
I'm gonna comment on the motion there.
Okay, on the amendment to the motion or the motion?
Okay, I'll wait.
Sorry, trying to get,
Okay,
keep
I
our
won't comment on the amendment. Yeah.
So do we have any comments on the amendment? Councilmember Van Orman.
I appreciate that Councilmember Kurtz put a date to this discussion. Having it open in is not a great idea.
All right, and if there are no other comments, we're voting on the amendment, which adds till the 15th to the original motion to table it. So the amendment is what we're voting on. So all in favor of the, yes,
Can I ask a clarification from our attorney? Because I'm a little confused here. We already have approved our last meeting to raise the 20,000. So that's already there. Now the motion is to postpone until the workshop. Is that correct? And there's a second to that.
Nothing is changing what took place at the prior meeting. Annie's motion was just to table the discussion until the 15th. That was the original motion. So for further discussion under a workshop, so there'd be more dialogue amongst the council, and I think to have Chris present. And then the secondary motion was simply to amend the original motion to put a specific date on the original motion to the 15th. So the current vote is merely to amend the original motion to change the topic discussion to February 15th.
Thank you. I did not realize that Councilman Van Orman had made an amendment to that. Thank you.
no, yeah, Annie amended her own motion. So we're only voting on adding the 15th information right now. So all in favor of adding the February 15th to the first motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 6-1 with Mayor Pro Tem against. So the amendment is approved. Now we're back to now discussing and voting on the original amended motion. So what we'll be talking about and voting on is tabling this discussion until the 15th. Okay, I paid attention to Ann McFarland's thing last week.
Nice job.
Okay. It's on tabling till the 15th.
Mayor.
There you go.
I'm certainly not too proud to acknowledge that I've overlooked something in the discussion at this chamber. With that said, I'm not one to let it sit for any length of time. I'd rather address it right here, right now. So on that note, I'm not going to support the motion.
Gotcha. All right, any other questions, comments on tabling till 15th? Councilmember Carter.
Just one question, I guess, for Councilmember Kurtz. So the tabling this topic until the 15th includes just the discussion on the pro shop part of this and not the overall discussion that Kyle was referring to. Is that correct?
Yes, from my perspective, we would talk about whether to move to the 20,000 or move off of what we've already agreed to. But I think Kyle it sounds like has a plan for talking about the financial stuff in coming forward. But I would really like to have the perspective of the golf pro, because I think we're talking about the impact to his daily flow of work. And so I feel like not having him here, it feels like we're doing him a disservice and we might not have all the information. So I would just like to have him here and get that taken care of, hopefully in short order on the 15th.
Thank you. I would like to point out that the discussion I had with Kyle Dixon extensively to this, and also Kyle had extensive conversation. He's shaking his head with the golf pro. It was my understanding that it was really not an issue. Am I speaking out of turn, Kyle?
Correct. So when this was originally brought up, so Chris and then another member of my staff brought it forward to me for my consideration. I reviewed it, and to Council Member Foyer's point, I didn't understand necessarily the implication that it had. And so that's my fault for not recognizing that. I looked at it purely as we're trying to run a business here. We're trying to give as much flexibility as we can for him to be responsive to customers. And I knew the financial policies, but my understanding was that council authorizing this supersedes or is an amendment to these policies because we have verbiage from a council meeting that authorizes it.
Councilmember Kurtz, and then we'll be back to Mayor Pro Tem.
I think part of my motivation to table it is because we still have several agenda items and it's 10:15. We're going to have to extend our meeting again. We've got citizen comments, we've got introduction of upcoming agenda items and a few other things business wise to take care of. I understand we're on this topic, but for me, I would still really appreciate having the golf pro and a little bit more time to just kind of piece this out. So if I could call the question, and I guess if there's a second on that, we can move forward with whether or not to end discussion tonight on this topic.
Second.
Second.
Calling the question. A second from Councilmember Dunn. Those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Four, hold on, I missed one, let me, sorry, try to get the in-person, so I raise your hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, are those opposed? 2, all right, we have, vote is 5-2 to call a question, that is technically 2/3, I guess we can say that, all right. There it's down, all right, so we'll go ahead and take the vote on the motion to table this to the 15th. So those in tabling this discussion to the 15th, please say aye and raise your hand and hold it up until I'm done. Aye. Okay. Who's opposed? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Ayes have it. 5-2. All right, so we will be moving the rest of this discussion to 15. All right, I think we're good. Councilmember Carter.
Can I make a motion that we extend until 10:45?
You can make that motion. Let's see if we get a second.
Second.
We have a second. Tim, those in favor of extending to 10:45, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll give you any opposed. All right, motion passes. We're extended to 10:45. All right, we are, let me get the agenda back out here. We are up to council comments. Do any council members want to make any more comments?
Just want to get here. Let the record reflect she has a taser.
Councilmember Carter.
I just want to say, and I think we had a great meeting tonight. I appreciate everyone's ideas and votes and opinions, even if I might disagree with them. I appreciate them. I am a little disappointed. I'm struck by the fact that we only have about 22 people, about half what we had on the line earlier. I am a little disappointed about the comments made earlier about the organization that I work for. My integrity or my ability to be fair-minded and open-minded. I really believe it's unbecoming of any council member to make an accusation of another council member or to effectively put that council member on trial simply because he or she might disagree with an idea that council member had. I think the proper way to handle this would have been for that council member or council members to contact each other directly if they have questions. I'm disappointed that didn't happen. And since the city code and misconduct was brought up earlier, let me also read from the city code, which says that any person who should file with or report a charge of misconduct on the part of any public official or other person encompassed within this definition of this chapter, knowing such a charge to be false or to have been recklessly made without any reasonable attempt to determine relevant facts and circumstances, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. I appreciate what Council Member Van Orman sent out in the email last week when she said we should be able to make decisions, vote, shake hands afterwards. You may not agree with a council member's day job, and that's totally fine. I have no problem with that, but I believe that what unites us as a council and a community is much greater than what divides us. So thank you.
Any other council comments? All right, Councilor Dunn.
Thank you. I would just reflect that as a voter, I would expect that the person who represents me in government advocates for policy because it's good for our community, not because they were paid. And that the appearance, even the slight appearance of a conflict of interest, creates great hazard in discerning and judgment. So I just reflect on the objective that as elected officials, we rise to a higher call, that we must not put ourselves in positions which give even the slight possibility that our judgment was somehow changed by some circumstance. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, not seeing any more council comments. We have no public hearings or appeals, no resolutions, no ordinances, no emergency ordinances. Introduction of upcoming agenda items. Kelsey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have quite a list of workshops that have come up and mentioned to be scheduled for the 15th. So I'd like to run through those with you all and get input on if we want to keep them all, if there are some that we would like to postpone and prioritize others. So perhaps most importantly, we have the Trailhead Workshop scheduled for 6 o'clock and then also continuation at 7 p.m. if needed. I've heard that the Code of Ethics Social Media Subcommittee will likely be ready for a workshop on the 15th also, so I put that on there. I've had it requested for an STA update on the status of I-90 and the Valley High Performance Transit Plan. I don't know a lot of details on that one, but
Kelsey, do you know who asked for that? There's not a name on.
No, it was on the advance agenda. It might have been Lisa would be my best guess.
It was me indeed. They are working on the high performance transit plan. We are on the subcommittee and they have requested that they be able to present to the electeds. Hopefully they were hoping to do that before public open house on March 2nd, I believe.
Lisa, can we put that under special presentations instead of workshop and limit them to a certain amount of time?
I did already tell them that they were limited to 10 minutes. So yes, we could do them as a special presentation if you would prefer.
That's probably a better place for it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move that one to special presentation. We also had talked about tentatively doing an update or discussion on the ARPA funds.
So that was my recollection was that was to get council consideration and feedback on moving forward with any new programs. Was that, am I remembering that correct?
I think Councilmember Collier brought it up. Councilmember Collier, would you mind if that moved out a meeting?
30 days is fine.
Okay, we appreciate that. Kelsey, did you get that?
Sorry, was there a date to postpone it to or put it on TBD?
Put it out two meetings. We could put it about 30 days out, so mid-April. No, I'm sorry, mid-March.
March.
I'm a month ahead of myself.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, we'll reschedule that one for March. Was also requested to have a scope update from Chief Simmons.
Yeah.
So we'll do that next. Well, I don't think that one will take real long.
It probably doesn't even require a workshop. It could just be a presentation or update.
Okay.
Yeah, that one shouldn't take long. What I'm gonna try to do is get one of the scope that's a county ran program. So I was gonna see if I can get one of the county representatives from scope to maybe come give an update on that. But truth is we don't have anything to do with that program. So if I can get a county representative to maybe come give a presentation, I'll try to do so.
I would just add that if that's not doable by the 15th, I have no qualms of moving that forward to whenever is convenient.
Did you get that, Jay?
I did, and I think that'll probably go along with our Citizens Academy that we're trying to get accomplished. So I'll see if I can get all that maybe put into the same presentation.
We can talk a little bit more about all this tomorrow in the directors meeting as well. And then we've got, David, you've got the turtling workshop on for the 15th. Is that a real time sensitive thing, or can we need the time to concentrate on Trailhead, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, my name seems to be on this. I'm assuming it's probably because myself and Councilman Cargill had met with the chief and David. I guess my question would be this, Chief. Is that a time sensitive situation, or can we postpone that? And why is it? For me, I would like to see us give as absolutely much time to Trailhead over anything else. Is that a time sensitive issue?
No, yeah, no, it's not. And it's something we can postpone, and you can take care of your priorities first, and we can always revisit that.
And I would recommend, yeah, because my name got tagged on that. I'll put on there Mayor Pro Tem / Councilman Cargill. Guilty. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to put on the TBD for the advanced agenda?
Sorry, two other workshops that were mentioned tonight. And I wasn't sure about the financial policy and golf purchases. Will that come back as a workshop on the 15th or to revisit as an action item?
Maybe a workshop.
Yeah, probably a workshop.
Okay, so I'll add that one to the workshop schedule. And then a city administrator executive recruitment firm, is that going to be a workshop discussion or an action item?
It'll probably be both.
Okay, for the 15th. Okay. That's all I had to add to note.
Just 2 questions. One, it seemed to be the consensus of the council earlier, at least from what I was reading, to try to bring back some sort of resolution as opposed to proclamation on emergency orders, unless I did not read that correctly. If that's the case, are we planning to bring it back? I know it's not a workshop, but are we trying to bring it back in some sort of way?
That one's let's see, but that's not the, I hate to say vibe, but that's not the vibe I got, but we can certainly, if you'd like to make a motion to bring it back as a resolution, you can make that motion and we need a second.
Okay, let's bring, I'm gonna make a motion, we bring back as a resolution instead of a proclamation.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and second by Councilmember Van to bring back what was on tonight's proclamation, to bring it back as a resolution at the next meeting. There any discussion or, okay, I've got a couple hands up here. I think Councilmember Kurtz and Councilmember Baird.
I thought we already voted on this.
I would agree with that. I thought we did too.
And because I remember saying that I voted no because I didn't believe it needed to be an ordinance. So I thought it was already coming back.
No, it's just talking about you.
This is on the proclamation on the give me the words, emergency powers, not the ordinance on the income.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we were talking about the tax one.
Annie, I'm right there with you.
Hold on, we have to, Councilmember Baird next.
Sorry.
No, that actually was my question.
Councilmember Fuller.
So I guess my comment, before you expend any energy on that, would it be wise to see where it goes even in committee before we get too far ahead of ourselves? Because right now it's not even.
Yes, but we'll know that on Friday. They're planning, or excuse me, Thursday. They're planning an executive session on Thursday. So what I would like to do is put it on for the 15th. If it doesn't go anywhere, nothing is officially dead until the legislature leaves Olympia. So there's a chance it could come back. But yeah, I mean, if it's looking like it's not going to happen at that time, then of course we can just remove it from the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so if there's no, Councilmember Kurtz.
I just want to go back to, I think, some of this briefly, because again, we're running out of time here. I don't think it's the city's role to talk about this and have a position, whether it's in a resolution, whether it's in an ordinance or a proclamation. So that would be my position.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll take the vote on, so the vote would be to bring back the
Emergency.
Proclamation as a resolution, at the next meeting, should it continue going through the legislature. So all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Yeah, because it needs three members to bring a resolution back. Here, if we don't know what the rules procedure. So add 1, 2, 4. I ran out of room on my tally list. And those opposed, please raise your hand. All right, motion carries 4-3. So we'll keep an eye on the legislature and we will potentially be bringing that back depending on what happens there.
Thank you. Just wanted to see if we can add one more on the TBD, and that is a discussion. I know Councilmember Kennedy has brought this up, Councilmember Van Orman has as well, to discuss the future of the utility tax.
Yeah, that's usually part of the budget process every year, and so that's usually in the fall. So if we can put it on the future agenda for them, but it's always part of the process.
Visit that before July, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
And the reason being is we also need to visit the state of our streets.
The what?
They tie together.
Streets maintenance.
All right, and we'll go and we'll go over all these, Kelsey, tomorrow, as well as make sure we got everything for whenever our next meeting is. Okay. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to make a point here when it comes to the to be determined. I brought up last year for the discussion of the tax, and it was brought up for a discussion. And the discussion was we would postpone until this next year, and I agreed to that. But I also said I wanted on the to be determined because my intention is to bring it up substantially sooner than later, not when we get later on down the road. Because this is something that if we need input from the citizens and stuff, I want to give sufficient time for the citizens to have their voice heard.
And it also takes more time to go ahead and implement it with city staff too.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of a waylay.
Yeah. So I will be looking at the date, and I will come up with some sort of a date to recommend to the council, and then council will decide if it works or not. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Kurtz.
I guess my suggestion on the order of the agenda for the next meetings, I feel like the vibe that I'm getting from council is that Trailhead is our priority. And I feel like that should be the #1 thing on whatever workshop we're looking at bringing forward. I think, again, while everybody has the right to put on ordinances about some of this other stuff, and I've been on the record with my perspective on it. I don't want these things to get in the way of the actual city business that affects our residents and moving forward on that. We're having really long meetings and I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to not seeing everybody's faces next week. We have a 1-week break before we see each other again. But I really want to make sure that we have time to focus on city business as well. Some of these other things seem to be important to other people and I'm happy to discuss them. But Trailhead is really important. We need to get moving on that.
Thank you. All right, there's no more introduction, more up on the agenda items. We are back to citizen comments. If there are any citizens left. This is your opportunity to comment again on any topic. You'll have up to 3 minutes. Just let us know your name and if you're a city resident. You'll have 3 minutes, and if there are any questions to be answered, we'll take your contact info and get back to you with the answers. So anybody with a citizen comment?
We have DG Garcia.
Okay, DG Garcia, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and citizens. I am grateful for the deliberations that continue to happen. The discussion is full of information. And although many citizens are not in the room, the thought that they should be included continues, and I appreciate that. Although, and this is the hard part, and when I'm the messenger, sometimes I feel as though the message is not heard, or whomever brings the message forward is not appreciated for what I'm actually wanting to say now. Although I, along with others during tonight's deliberation over the people's business, which you deliberated over and over very well, I must admit that I heard a number of stones broken and a lot of glass lying on the floor, I suspect is now in the chambers. I'm humbled through my opinion that what makes Liberty Lake so special is that we see the bigger picture of what Liberty Lake together really means, and that we pay close attention to the importance of that. And I hope we never lose sight of that. I appreciate your deliberations. I think when you deliberate over the people's business, it is never good to throw stones. But once we look within ourselves and find out where we too may have been at fault, we can learn from that. Doing the people's business is a hard job. It is never ending. There is no praise and there is little thanks. But we don't want to see you fall apart. And we want to see you remain the Liberty Lake together that we know. I appreciate and value all of you. I appreciate your thoughts, your deliberations, your kindness, but more important, your truth. As long as you tell the truth as you see it, and the deliberations goes on as it needs to be, we are going to be fabulous. We're going to be fine. We're going to be golden. Thank you for that opportunity, and I accept your considerations.
Appreciate your comments as always. Todd, do we have anybody else looking to make a comment?
At this time.
Okay, if you want to make a comment, one more chance to send a note to Todd Henderson in the chat, and he will let me know. Going once. Going twice. Oops.
We really need Jeopardy music.
Okay, all right, so not seeing any more customer comments, citizen comments. If there are no objections, we will adjourn. Any objections?
Second.
Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us.
Thank you.